order, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will join us, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Betty, if the record could reflect, we met in executive session to discuss matters leading to the appointment or employment of a particular person or persons. We will now, trustees, move on to action item number 3, which is the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion, please?
Motion.
A second?
Second.
Are there comments or questions?
I do. I
Thank
have a correction, and Trustee Russo might want to chime in on this on page 6. Page 6 before comments from the public. Trustee Vizza added she supports the work of the new administration, ... Trustee Russo added that she had attended a presentation on special ed given by District Counsel Jack Feldman. I believe that was Trustee Vizza that attended the
Correct.
special, yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I think Trustee
So instead of
Russo said
Trustee Ru-
Trustee Vizza
Right.
that attended, but we don't need to go into that kind of detail.
Okay. Anything else?
I have a very small one. Just on top of page 10, it says Jen Lamont was appointed
never-
Assistant Chair of LAC. It should just be Secretary. Sorry.
Do we have anything else? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion.
A second? Any other questions or comments? All in favor?
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here. I wasn't.
Trustee Madden would like to abstain due to his absence. Thank you. All right. Number 4 is the report of the superintendent, Dr. Giarrizzo.
Thank you very much. So, this is our final meeting of 2018, so welcome to all. I would like to extend very hearty and heartfelt wishes for happy holidays to all. Happy Hanukkah to those who are done celebrating. Merry Christmas to those who will be celebrating. Happy Kwanzaa to those who will be celebrating that, and Happy New Year to everybody. Over the past few weeks, I've been to many concerts, and there are many concerts in North Shore. They have all been really terrific. It's quite remarkable. And then I go to my own children's concerts, right? And then I compare, right? Because I had been to my son's middle school concert, and I had been to some elementary concerts, and I have to tell you, I'm biased now. The quality of the programming that happens in the fine and performing arts here is really, truly outstanding. What our music teachers are getting out of kids in 3 months is nothing short of amazing. So I want to thank our teachers for that. I don't see Dahlia here, but she's probably at a concert. I want to thank her for her leadership. It's really quite remarkable. Tonight we'll conclude our reports on student achievement. This is our third and culminating report, and I want to welcome Albert Cousins and his team here. Thank you very much for being here tonight. As we've done with our elementary and middle school presentations, and at the board's wishes and my recommendation, we took a broad look at student achievement. Thus, in addition to the quantitative analysis of test scores and outcomes, of great importance to what we do here is our qualitative analysis of student achievement across a broad spectrum of measures. And so we have looked at what that means for what success is at North Shore High School, where do opportunities exist for continuous improvement. And so while I've asked Albert and his team to highlight test data, this is a good primary use of the board's time. Won't be to go through each and every single one of those tests in deep detail, but to focus on the broader arena of achievement. So not unlike our elementary and middle schools, North Shore High School is a story of tremendous success, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story tonight. an outline for what is next in our collective journey. So welcome. While they're gone, I do want to thank our auditors for their report this evening, and we'll look forward to getting those recommendations incorporated, set forth, and I think your plan for what to look at next and thereafter are thoughtful and like the next right step. So thank you for that. We've also been preparing our 2019-2020 budget. All of our budget requests are currently in. We've met with all of our administrators over the course of the last month and a half or so. We're now in the process of inputting that data and aligning the programming requests to your priorities that you established with us a couple of weeks ago, our strategic plan, and then the ongoing needs of the district. Our preliminary staffing discussions will happen in January, and I will be ready to present the preliminary budget to the board on February 7th as planned. Just a thank you to the board for very thoughtful, comprehensive feedback at our last meeting on our budget priorities. It was really helpful and, quite frankly, very confirming of why we do what we do. So thank you all very much. As I conclude my remarks this evening, I want to take a minute to thank our Assistant Superintendent Rob Klobicki for 16 years of strong instructional leadership for the North Shore Schools. He will hate that I'm doing this for sure, but I will tell you I'm going to do it anyway. And as I explained to him, that sometimes these things are less about him and more about others. So the board tonight will take action on Rob's retirement this evening. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention how much I value and appreciate your leadership and your partnership. Rob, you have been instrumental in North Shore's success. You are a leader of the utmost integrity and intellect. You always put children first, and I will miss you very much. So on behalf of our grateful Viking family of over 3,000 strong, and then all of our parents and community members and all of them, you have my profound thanks and gratitude. And so I will turn it back to you.
I'm sure we all echo Peter's remarks, and there might be a few more to come. So we next have the report from the SGA.
Thank you. So this week we didn't have too much to report on, but first I'd like to say that we had a great visit this week from CASA, as Joanna was nice enough to come down and visit us at our weekly meeting on Tuesday. And we discussed together like the goals of CASA, and I know a lot of the SGO members afterwards were very interested and grateful for the meeting, and a lot would like to participate in the future, so we want to thank you for that. And the other one thing that we had was coming up next week we have candy cane sales in the school. So we sell the candy canes. I think as of right now it's going to be on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we'll collect them all, and basically you buy one and put someone's name on it, and then on Friday we will deliver it to the Commons and take a fun activity before we go off for winter break. So that's it for us this week.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Next, we have our report on achievement at the high school.
Exactly. Michael, thank you very much. Happy holidays. Okay, so Albert, why don't you come on up and join us? I want to thank you for the good work you've done in putting this together. It is a very comprehensive presentation. It looks more overwhelming than it is, right? It's of 50 some odd slides, but we're going to be efficient. And while he is getting started, I do want to thank our directors and teacher leaders who are here tonight. Pardon me? You are ready to go whenever, whenever you are ready. Okay,
So I'm going to do
great.
my best effort to be as both concise and comprehensive at the same time. I did provide backup data over the summer that has very, very detailed for every single score of every single student in high school. So I am going to go through all of the data for all of the standardized measures, but I'm also going to be illustrating what I would define as achievement at the high school. And one thing that's become crystal clear over the past 10 years in this position is that our role, as I see it, is to make sure that every single student has a mentored experience that is personalized, and that no matter what path it is for that individual, that they will find success. And what is really excellent at this point is that we have expanded the variety of pathways that our students can engage in, and in all of those measures, students are finding success. The one challenge of presenting data like this is it's very holistic, it's the whole grade, it's percentages, and it doesn't really get down to the individual. I think an interesting study would be to take every single student and look at their individual pathway, their individual goals, and measure the extent to which they've met them. Because I think it's very easy to slip into this idea that everyone should be taking an AP class or an IB class, but the truth of the matter is there are students who are highly successful and achieving very well taking all Regents classes in our school. And even furthermore, when we did some deeper dives into even with our students receiving ENL services, looking at the increase in students who progress from one level to the next is significant. And although it may not appear in the data that you'll see for all of these exams that we have in IB and AP, for that individual student, it is a tremendous marker of success. And there's a lot of data that I can provide to you. So any questions that you have, I'm more than willing. I've learned pretty much everything there is to learn about how the students are performing in the school. I also want to briefly mention the fact that we have now assured experiences. So there's much more of a common experience for what students engage in our high school, while we've expanded the variety as they proceed throughout their 4 years. And you will see that as I present the data. And we do measure the performance of our students also by the extent that they're engaging in the different things that we offer, both in terms of the courses as well as the activities. And I'll just put this out there now. I did a study by looking at students and what are they actually doing. It's very easy to just count numbers of kids in clubs. That's a very different number when you talk about the individual student and say, who is actually finding a connection in the building? And probably to no surprise to those of you who have had children in the school, one student could be the president of 4 clubs. One student is involved in 8 different things, while we still have some students who have not yet found their niche. And I think that's significant, because we can put out lots of numbers of people involved in different activities, but when you look at it in a different way, the data can be presented very differently. So I think that's just a cautionary note as we look at these statistics, and I will try to qualify the sources for each of those. And the fourth bullet, which I think is really critical, is making sure that we're asking the right questions. So I'm going to be presenting data that that we're accountable to, but I also share some of the questions that we've raised and some of the resources that we've used to find the answers to that. All right, so we're going to begin. This year I organized it by department, so it's easier to kind of digest around that. So instead of looking at all the Regents exams across the school, we're going to be looking at all of the exams in a particular department and talking more broadly about that department. I think it's easier to then see the correlation, because many times students are taking 2 exams in that zone within one given year. So first up is the ELA Regents. This is the 11th grade Regents, commonly known now as the Common Core exam. That changed in 2015-16. Our students continue to do very well on this exam. Again, I'm not going to go through each of these slides. You've had a chance to review them, but I will talk about some aspects of it. So here you can see us in terms of the districts that we've been comparing ourselves to at each of the other presentations. When you really look at this, there's high achievement on this exam. This is an exam required for graduation. So although it looks like in terms of ranking, it is obviously very strong results, but we're really focusing on the mastery and really the quality of what students are doing. We have an expectation that all of our students will achieve mastery. This is something that we strive toward, and we've had continuous improvement in that.
The next exam is the AP English Composition. This slide is important for you to recognize the change in the sample size. You'll notice that in 2018, only 2 students opted to take this exam. That's significant because starting in 2016 was the first year that students were in the IB English course as juniors, and some opted to take that exam. In 2017, the school paid for all of those AP exams. So you see that number went way, way, way up, while the performance went way, way, way down. And there are a number of factors for that. But last year was the first year that students made the decision of why take this test. Is it going to make a big significant difference? As we've had the program implemented, students are opting not to take this exam at the end of junior year. Some are declaring their intent to take it as seniors as well, but that's significant to see that shift in terms of the exams. It's also significant when I show you the overall AP testing numbers, which are still very high, and you'll see that's coming in from other areas, primarily in science and math. This is a AP Lit. So this is a course that has always existed as a freestanding AP, and it still does. It is the English option for 12th graders. So the students who take this course in 12th grade are not in the IB. Most likely they took IB in 11th grade, not exclusively, but a vast majority of them, almost every single one of them. We have some pretty serious concerns about this, and I feel awkward because I'm twisted.
Can we move the...
So for both the College Board and the IB, they give us an instructional planning report. The IB one is a very lengthy narrative discussing the trends in that. With an exam like this, and Dr. Titone shared this with me, we can see exactly the components where our students are underperforming compared to their peers. And that's really important as we develop a plan moving forward. So this, there's a lot of work being done on this. Also work in the counseling department of making sure students are making this choice, understanding what the course demands are. We've often had difficulties with seniors and AP exams. They're already accepted into their schools, and that's always been a challenge. But we have an expectation that if they're in the course, that they're going to do well on the course. And that goes back to the idea of a mentored, personalized program. If you're opting to take this, we do expect you to be successful. And you'll see examples where that's working really well. This is the IB exam in English, and this is also an interesting correlation to the quality of work that the teachers are doing and why we're seeing a decrease in the number of students taking the AP Comp. This is absolutely stunning results. So getting a 4, 5, or 6 on the IB exam is basically passing, but getting a 5, 6, or 7 is considered excellent on that IB exam. And all but 3 students who took this assessment got a 5, 6, or 7. And that is absolutely incredible when you compare it to the global averages, which I'll show you later. But this is directly tied to the quality of instruction and the extent to which the 4 teachers, both in 11th grade and 12th grade, have really embraced the spirit and philosophy of the course. The students are so well prepared for this exam, and I anticipate that the retention rates from 11th grade to 12th grade will continue to increase as they have. You'll see just the numbers, 57 in 2017 to 74 in 2018. So you see more students are staying in for the full 2 years and understanding kind of the point of the program. Because if you, as you may or may not remember, we're only in year 4 of the program. We've only graduated 2 cohorts so far, but we're extremely pleased with this, and we anticipate this will be our normal performance, if not even higher. We now move into social studies, so this is the global regents. We've had a pretty consistent level of performance there on this exam. You've already seen this data, so I'm going to go quickly through it. With our peer group, another slide that you have to kind of really pay attention to those neighborhoods, in that 95 percentile. We typically hover around that 95, 96 percentile there with passing, and then the mastery. But the more important part is looking at where the students are performing and how they are deriving at these grades. So if you know anything about scoring, there's often there's a side that goes multiple choice, then the essays go across, and you kind of meet your fingers in the middle. That's the score. There's not a direct correlation to if I miss 2 multiple choice, I'm going to get a 98. It is not that logical. And you'll see our students are performing very well on the written components. That's going to be a kind of a pattern that you see throughout. Any task or assessment that requires them to develop an argument, to support an argument, they're performing very well, not as well on the multiple choice. And I say that now, and when I show you the chemistry slide later, I will talk back to that, because the section where our students are underperforming is in that multiple choice section. But much of the instruction and assessment that happens in the day-to-day, in the routine experience of the classroom, is much less multiple choice than it has been over in the 10 years, and it will continue to decrease just based on the curriculum. This is AP World, another absolutely stunning performance. This is really excellent, and it is really, consistently in that zone. And this is our 10th graders taking their first AP exam, many of them. And then what we are able to do now, as a result of the data warehouse, is to do regional comparisons, so I can discuss how we compare to the region. I have that document. I will share it with Peter and with the board. We're not allowed to discuss it. It's confidential information from the groups that agreed to give us the data, but I can tell you in this case we are outperforming the region by about 27% in terms of the percentage of students scoring a 3, 4, or 5 on this exam. All right, and I'll get a little bit more into that when I get to the AP slides later. This is the 11th grade U.S. History Regents. Again, consistently high performance there, where 99.5% passing. This is another one of those exams that is required for graduation. One thing that all of those exams have in common is the scoring tends to be a little bit more forgiving. So you'll see high passing rates for all of the peer districts as well. If you really look at this, it's misleading, because even the lowest listed one here is at a 94% passing rate. So you have to kind of take this data for what it is. I just share it as a means for you at recognizing how our students are doing as compared with like a broader range in the region. All right, this is another really fascinating slide. This is AP US. Now, be mindful of the fact that these students in the last 3 years, that's 16, 17, and 18, are in IB social studies. So they're sitting in an IB class, and each year of this, it's been a little bit different, as we're finding the best strike zone. And I believe we found that in 2018. In the first year, you'll see we had very few students opt to take it, 27. They did very well on that. In 2017, again, the district paid for every single AP exam that any student opted to take, and the performance decreased significantly in that year, as it did as a pattern across everything in 2017 with the AP scores. But in 2018, those students very early on, they declared their intent, the teachers knew that, and we made sure that they were prepared for that. And that gets back to my whole point that we want to mentor students and have them be successful on whatever pathway that is. And if you look at the historical trend, we were underperforming the region for all of those years when it was just AP US. And I'll actually show you the numbers of that comparison. But now we are outperforming the region for those students who are opting to take it. What's important about that is these students are actually in the IB course. They will take the IB assessment. They will do well on the IB assessment. But they're also, for those opting to take the AP assessment, are doing well. They're getting 4s. They're getting 5s. They're doing well on that. And I think that's an important thing to recognize, that when we say achievement, we're not saying achievement is only if you take IB courses or only if you take AP courses. Achievement is, if you're involved in it, you are going to do well. It's that power of high expectations for all the teachers in all of the classes, whether it's a Regents exam or an AP exam. This is IB history, and Dr. Titone and I have looked at what the reasoning behind this. So there's something called Paper 2, and she sent me the report for that, which is a very comprehensive document that goes through all of the reasons why the students were scored the way they were. And it's so great to see the extent that the feedback is related to our students, talking about the quality of the questions, the question too broad, because in this particular paper they're developing inquiry, identifying sources, and then using those to basically prepare their written statement. So we know exactly where our area is to focus on, and we have a really solid path moving toward this. We've also seen an increased retention from 11th grade to 12th grade just in the second cohort and then in the third as well, which we see as an indicator of success for students kind of staying in the full duration of the course. This is IB Business. I included this as one of the few electives that I included, but I included this to show you the power of us taking the time to look at our student performance at a fine grade level. Now remember, this is not just a one-time test. All IB assessments go throughout the year. So it's not just one day how the students do. We do have an exam period, but there are internal assessments as well and things that happen in the class that the teacher works with the students that makes that grade comprehensive. And so you can see a dramatic increase in the business class, which is a new program to North Shore in just the past 5 years. And this teacher really understood that task, and our students will continue to be more prepared moving forward. The IB as an organization does a really good job at preparing the faculty and letting us know how we can do better, because it's much more of a process-oriented assessment. We can do that versus in the AP assessments, which are also important, but it's much harder to do that because it's just about do you know this content. So it's a harder target to hit. We're just talking about topics versus developing the skills, which is something the students can do with any unknown challenge that they might face on the assessment. This is another one of the electives in the course. It's a small sample size. This is the social cultural anthropology IB assessment. We now move into science. When we spoke last year, a similar time last year, we talked about earth science and our performance in earth science. We had definitely had some really nice gains when we first got these results back in June. We were really happy, and then our second question was, did everyone do better on this? Like, how does this kind of stack up against others? And with our peer group, this is a significant shift in earth science in particular. And that was one of those areas that we looked at it. We have a really talented faculty in that. And the other problem you will see is consistency matters. I mean, obviously, the teachers are everything. The quality of instruction is the #1 factor behind all of this. My job is really to make sure I can inspire people, set a tone, and make sure this is a great place to come to work so people are motivated. But the bottom line is teachers matter. And the more stable a course is in terms of the less turnover, retirements, all those have an impact. So we have a really good, stable, some new hires in this department, but they're doing really well in this achievement, and we're really proud of that. And we anticipate to continue to see the mastery level increase. System-wide, we're focusing on mastery. Passing for us is just an expectation, a bare minimum, and so we're going to continue to look at that. Next is chemistry. Chemistry is probably the word I say most everywhere I go. And you'll see across all of the assessments, there's still further opportunity in chemistry. It is a difficult course. We continue to see, a really high participation rate, so the engagement rate in terms of who is taking chemistry is critical. So when I compare this to the peer group, this is something where we obviously want to be in a much higher position. So then when I actually made phone calls to find out, we have to also consider who is taking the course, who takes the regents. There's a whole growing avenue out there of general chemistry courses, the non-regents chemistry courses. So that's important to consider. Again, I'm not making an excuse for that, because if you're in it, we expect you to perform at a higher level. So this is definitely on our list of our next area of focus, and I can assure you that you'll continue to see growth there. This is AP Chem. So now chemistry is now AP IB, so the students are taking both. They are required to take both assessments. We have similar performance in both the AP Chem, very small sample size. This is usually under, it used to be under around 13 to 20, and now we're into around 11 last year. So it's always in that low teens. This is another area where the performance could be stronger. It should be stronger, because if you're in this, we want it to be something that is when you're learning it at a higher level, but you should also be able to perform when you are sitting for those assessments. So you can see it's very similar between both assessments. The teacher knows both of those assessments well, has been trained in both of those assessments, and those are both areas where we do expect and want further growth in chemistry. Okay, so next is physics. So we're going to see a couple series of slides in physics. And physics is very interesting. When we look at data for the full group. We look at data by teacher. We look at data by component. So what you're seeing is like just the whole number. This is not what we use for making instructional choices, for making decisions about personnel, making sure that people are in the best fit. There's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes when we look at the data. And so what you're seeing here is a culmination of everything. And there are factors that contributed to this, because although it looks like a similar performance to last year was not a level of performance that we were happy with as well. So this is an area of focus. You'll see also in our peer group, like chemistry, this is certainly an opportunity where students should be achieving a much higher level. I feel very comfortable with the plan that we have in place. We have, again, I talked a little bit about turnover. We had a lot of difficulty spanning, just in, I would say, the last 5-6 years with pretty much a rotating door in physics. I think that we're in a great place now with the department. We've made some shifts in terms of the course and instruction in the course, and I think that we are destined to see a pretty substantial growth in this area. It's an area that we are putting tremendous oversight on, and we have a real good handle on where the students' readiness in terms of mathematics is going to become a big asset in terms of performing on this assessment. This is the AP Physics. Now these students are, now 2016 was the last year that we had a freestanding AP Physics course. In 2017 was the first year they were co-seated with IB. So we got that. We saw these results, and I presented it to you. This was last year's presentation. We were pretty disappointed. We had a pathway to that, and so now this second year, this 2019, those were students who were in the IB course as well. So now we've made some shifts. If you look in the course catalog, first year of physics is AP IB, so they will take that AP exam. They will be prepared for that, similar to what we do in biology. In year 2, the students who take that second year will take the IB exam in physics. So you can see this is the number of students. We had only 11 students who they were seniors in 2017 when they took the first IB exam. The second one, we had a good correction, a larger sample size, so the students were very well prepared for the IB physics exam, which is different than the AP physics, which is why we think separating those assessments out into 2 different years is going to be a much better way to prepare the kids and to ensure they're successful. Because as I said before, if they're in the course, we do want them to be having an achievement that we can be proud of. Biology is probably where we have done the best at finding that really great blend between AP and IB. It's nothing that we did as a district. It's more that the courses have naturally aligned. Much of the AP courses have really shifted to have much more of a philosophy similar to IB. Similar to the Common Core. It's much more about the thinking process, skills-based, even shifts in the amount of essays that students do, the amount of writing. And so in biology, you can see that natural connection is really, really present. And if you look at our comparison to the region, you will see now we are more ahead of the region in terms of students who sit for this exam, and it is required if you take AP IB Bio that you take the AP exam. You will see that we are outperforming the region better than we ever have, even when it was a freestanding, especially than when it was a freestanding AP course. And I will show that data with you in the upcoming slide. But this is exactly what we want to see, is that we're continuing to prepare them to do really well on this assessment, and then when they're seniors, they're also doing well on the IB exam. And this is IB year 2. So this is equivalent of taking 2 semesters of college-level biology. And we've had lots of feedback from parents whose children have been through both years of this biology course, talking about their experience. It's much like the students who, I'm sorry, Rich, for mentioning your name, but the students that Mr. Galati had, the kids come back and talk about how prepared they were in college and how they just felt very much ahead of their peers. And of course, similar things are happening with the students who are in IB too. And we're also really happy about is the way that the course fosters the independent inquiry. So students can leave high school having engaged in independent inquiry even if they didn't take the freestanding science research course. It's something that is an expectation in the IB Bio course. All right, now we're moving into math. Math had excellent achievement across the board. Geometry has been steadily increasing every single year. when you compare us to those schools that we compare us to, the students did exceptionally well. This is another example of when teachers work together. I mean, these teachers meet, plan, they're lockstep, primarily because of one function we put in the schedule. We have a geometry support lab that is taught by any one of the geometry teachers. So that means they have to be communicating, that they have to be lockstep, really, because they're going to be providing lab support for students who could be in any one of those geometry courses. So they're highly collaborative, they have common assessments, they're a model for the power of teachers coming together and really understanding what it is that the students need to learn and be able to do, and what that means when they're confronted with an unknown challenge. Because remember, this is an unknown challenge. They come on a day, they sit, they're confronted with these problems, and they're able to do this well. It's a really great example. And this continues with the Algebra 2 regents, which I love leading 9, 10, and 10, 11 there, because if you were around then, that's when like the torches came out and the world was ending with Algebra 2. And the math department really has a deep understanding of the skills required to have success on that. And there's still, the great thing about this is, despite, again, having like excellent performance, is that there's still so much room to grow. That's what's really exciting about this, is that we are by no means, I'm not sitting here today saying, oh, they got it figured out, because we are still just in the early stages of dealing with how to teach math most effectively. Our high school teachers this year were engaged in the professional development with the same that the elementary and middle school teachers have been engaged with. So we still have room to grow, and we still see so much potential in that. With all of that being said, we're achieving better than we've ever achieved, and that's really exciting. It's a great place to be, to not feel like, okay, well, we've got this figured out, because we're just at the beginning of figuring that out. Okay, so we're starting to see a good correction in AB Calc. So remember, the math department was in a period of transition, so we're starting to see that all balance out. What's going on at the same time of all of this is the difference of what's happening in 11th grade. And you will see when I present the IB statistics, we have one course in particular where every single student is getting really, really high grades. And that has a lot to do with how, when I say mentored pathway, of mentoring students into the appropriate course given their plans. So if you know your ideal goal is to take AP Calculus, whether it's AB or AP Calculus BC, we need to make sure you're taking the appropriate course in 11th grade. So I'll explain that better when I show you those slides. We also have a really nice correction in BC. So last year we had a small sample size of 11 students. This year, or in 2018, we had 20 students. Much better achievement on that, outpacing the region again. And so now let's look at the IB. I'm sorry, I put statistics on. This is AP Stat, and here's another example. In 2017, it was the first time the teacher taught the course, and again, I'm not saying that is the reason for that. If you actually look at this data, we had a real whopper number of 2s, and I actually I supplied to you earlier the 5-year, so you can see where all of those, where they came from. Same teacher in 2018, using the power of the instructional planning report, really taking an understanding of that, talking to the students about how they engaged with those problems, and this is the kind of things that you see. We have really excellent professional teachers who care about this, and they don't care about it so that the numbers look good so I can come to you and celebrate a nice bar graph. They care about that because they want the students, if they're sitting in that room, to be successful, no matter what room it is. And that is just how this place works. The teachers here really care about the students learning and being successful, and that's where you see a shift like that. And this is something that I would bet on being the new normal, because I know the quality of work of this teacher in particular, and all of our teachers. Okay, so this is IB Math SL. So this is the higher level of the 2 IB Math courses. This is the course that would be on the pathway to the AP Calculus. In the first year, we see a nice correction. As I told you before, IB provides lots of supports, so we have a better understanding of how the students will achieve well. We're getting into that kind of new normal of how the students are achieving. But here's the kind of look out for, or something that I'm concerned with. Although I'd love to be like, look, everybody's destroying it. They're so amazing on this test. They're 100%. What this means is that of those 43 students or 40 students, there are students who maybe, or I shouldn't say maybe, who need to be mentored into a more challenging course. And that is something that's where the academic side works with the counseling side, and that's something about having two options makes it a little bit tricky. So a lot of people think, oh, it's IB math, it must be a higher level. But the truth of the matter is the more that you understand about what math studies is versus math SL, you can make a better choice. And that's something that, the counselors have done a lot of work on, and you're going to continue to see the participation rates shift to where they should be. That being said, we have more students enrolling in higher level math than we have had ever, and that number has continued to rise. Prior to 2016, it was a very elite crew of about 7 to 8%, and now we're up into about 15 to 18% of students enrolling in the highest level. So that's something that we're always monitoring. So that's why I say it's not just the numbers, it's also what are they taking, how are they engaging, how are they interfacing with the pathways that we have to offer. I apologize for the slide. I debated, I don't know how to present the languages in a way that makes sense and a holistic. So the gray bars represent the passing on the Flax or the Klani. So the Flax represents all of the modern languages. Mandarin took their first Flax this year. They're not on the slide because they simply didn't fit. They have 100% passing, 74% mastery, which means above 85. The red line here indicates mastery. And just to kind of underscore the power of a teacher, if you look at Latin in 2015, if you remember, that was when we had a really tragic, unfortunate accident with one of our Latin teachers. And you can see what happens when you have a lot of time. And Latin teachers are hard to find, very hard to find. But you can see that is actually, you can see in the data of when that accident occurred. And that's the power of really great teachers. But we have a superior achievement. In the department, Anna and I talk all the time. Our expectation is 100% mastery on this. That is just the way we view this. We see this as a minimum standard. Passing is not, like that passing is just expected. Mastery is what we are aiming for, 100% mastery in all of those areas. Okay, this is going to be, I'll try to be quick on this. This is all AP exams taken in the school, and the percentage is scoring at a 3, 4, 5. The blue line, I guess the taller one than most of them, the brighter blue line represents us. The green one is the state of New York, and then the tealy one is the United States. So basically all test takers in the United States. So this just shows the percent scoring 3, 4, 5. So the data warehouse, they have two indexes. One is the participation index, one is the quality index. The participation index tells you how many kids are engaging with AP. That's what news they printed the 1 year, the participation index, and all the schools who offered IB were saying, what about us? Because they didn't account for students taking higher level IB classes in the participation index. So what I looked at was the quality index, and that is how successful are the students who are taking those courses. And so because I know here our expectation is a 4 or a 5, because we often say we have to have a 4 or 5 to get credit. What I wanted you to see was this slide is for the first time now our 4s are out. We have more 4s than 3s. That's important for you to know because it's very easy to look at high percentages of 3, 4s, and 5s and say, yeah, well, they're all 3s and 3s are mediocre. But now, for the first time, we are actually finally having more 4s than 3s, which is significant when you look at an array of AP scores. And I have all the 5-year data that I supplied earlier, but I'll supply again. We are missing the 16 and 17. We didn't participate in the data warehouse. At that time, I didn't realize how great the reporting was, so that's going to be something. We have a lot of excellent data, historical data that we can compare to prior to the IB implementation and then post-implementation, and its impact on AP. And the fact of the matter is that the quality index is much higher in the AP courses. So this one that looks like the stock exchange slide is one that has the courses that are co-seeded. So these are IB courses that have an AP. And the number, I'm not allowed to share the numbers like the regional average, but that number represents the difference of North Shore compared to the Regents in the quality index, which means the percentage of students scoring a 3, 4, 5. So if you look at total, we used to be underscoring the region in that. Then we were pretty close, and now in 2018, the students who are sitting for the exams are more likely to score a 3, 4, or 5. Now, that is with some exams where the students are really underperforming. Things like psychology, government, AP Lit. We have a lot of work to do in terms of getting those numbers, and despite all of that, our total quality index is still, we are one of the highest in the region in terms of the percentage of students scoring that. And that is still with significant participant rates in terms of the numbers of exams and numbers of students taking those exams. Biology is a really neat thing to look at. You can see we're now 17% above the region on the AP Bio while they're in the IB course. And that's something I'm just proud of, that we're able to sustain and give life to both of those and do it with good fidelity and with good student success. You can see chemistry is a concern. So that's a number where you look at chemistry and say that's a problem, because you can see that we shouldn't be in that zone. If those students are in that IB or AP chemistry, this is the AP chemistry test, they should be performing at a much higher level. Physics, I included that just to show the 12.7 versus, so the 2015 is when it was a freestanding AP Physics. So there was no IB, it didn't exist, it was just AP Physics. We are at 12.7 now. Those students who are taking the AP Physics are very much outpacing the region in terms of the quality on the getting a 3, 4, 5. U.S. history is also significant, same thing. We were under 30%, well 28%, 26%, 10%, 10%. And those are all of the years when it was a freestanding AP U.S. course. Now the students who are taking the AP exam are outscoring the region for the first time ever. And that's important because when we had the AP U.S., although the students did well in the course, the exam, for a billion factors that we could dissect, the students were underperforming their peers in the region. And that's very historic data from 2012 up through 15. I'm going to go very quickly through these. The next 4 slides are all cohort slides, just to show you the participation rates with IB. I'm going to go very fast through them. So this is the first year. These kids already graduated. All I added to this, you've already seen this slide 100 times, is that 30 or 35 students earned the diploma. So 86% earned the diploma in the first cohort through our school. This is our second cohort. This is the class that just graduated. What's really great about this is 35 of 37. One of them would have easily earned it, but didn't take a test. Yes. And then another one that had an E on the extended essay, and that's it. So our earning the diploma, 95%. Globally, 78%. So when we were first implementing this, a lot of concerns, people doing research saying, we heard that most people don't get the diploma, but as I said at the very, very beginning of this, we're defining success, that if you're in it, you're going to be successful at it. So if you're taking the diploma program, we're going to make sure you get the diploma. And that is my whole point about what we mean by when we say achievement. Cohort 3, what I want you to notice between Cohort 3 and Cohort 4 is check out the numbers of students taking 1 course, 2 courses, or 3 courses. You'll see that now more students are taking more courses without taking the full diploma, meaning that they're getting more comfortable with having a customizable hybrid experience. And that is what is important about our school. As we said from the very beginning, we want them to have a more customizable experience. Okay, this is us compared to the world. Our first year, we gave 3 assessments. You've seen this slide. 2017, same thing. You can see North Shore is the blue, the world is green. You can see there, that's where we noticed the physics last year. And then our current assessment data, you are seeing some pretty significant shifts. Primarily, you can see that English number there, and then the math, both of the math, even the upper level math, the students are doing really well on that, and I think there's some correction to be had in terms of the enrollment in that. But we do get extensive reports, and IB reporting it globally. What's really interesting about that is the number of data points that they're using is so significant that to be anywhere above that is actually difficult to do because there's such a large sample size, because they're worldwide scored assessments, or globally scored. Okay, we're almost through this. This is special ed. Last year was the first time we reported this data, and so I'm just showing you 2 years of that. What's really awesome is we have a tremendous department, and again, no matter what you're in, we want you to be successful. So 90%, with the exception of chemistry, 90% or higher is the passing rate for our students with an IEP. And that's with a 65. If I said what they needed, because many students will have a low pass option of a 55, those numbers are nearing 100% in almost every single exam. This is tremendous. When you think about who is earning in advanced regions, who is earning Regents diploma, these are students with IEPs, and this is their performance rate. These stack up against general ed populations across the region in terms of the percentages of students achieving mastery, on those required exams. In the future, I'm going to get the data to do some regional comparisons for us, like we do with the others, just so we have an indication on that. But this is new for us, just now 2 years reporting on this data, and has really done wonders. Last year was the first year we did it. We engaged the department in looking at that. It really raised their awareness, and you see some pretty significant increases just from being aware of the data that's available to you in terms of making adjustments with instruction. This year, this slide is new, and that is looking at the students involved in the reading program. So these are actually students beyond an IEP have difficulty with language processing, reading comprehension, some decoding. It's a small number. I put the numbers of students who are taking that, and their passing and mastery rate. So this is what I would consider an at-risk population of students. So these are students who, in addition to having resource room or co-teaching, they also have reading support. And we have one reading teacher at the high school who services all of these students in different forms. And it's a real full village effort to get these students to achieve on that. Many of these students will have to take the exams multiple times. The reason that you see the difference in numbers is some of them are coming into the high school a year behind, and so they're taking the Regents at different times. So this is the first time we're going to be reporting on that data, and we're going to continue to dive in a little bit deeper on each of them so you can see their performance over time. But what's great about that is these students are also included in our overall Regents data, and they're doing really well, and we have a great faculty member working with them. This is just a mean scores for the SAT. This is math, and it just shows our comparison to the state and the total group. I'm glad to see finally we're over the 600 hump in one of those, and it's in terms of the spreading from the region, this is something that has been relatively consistent in terms of the expansion over the state and the total group. This is the SAT writing. You can see as of 2016 that switched to the evidence-based reading and writing. So I just kept this data there so you would see it for historical purposes. This is the evidence-based reading and writing. We've been, relatively, if you can see as the trend is, we've just kind of ridden the wave, as it ebbs and flows throughout time. There's tons of research out there on SAT scores. You can, we're really kind of just in with that wave that's kind of ebbing and flowing. I don't know what happened in 2016, but they did really great with that transition, that shift in the test. And this is the ACT, the composite score. It has the average score for us compared to the state. That's what the ACT provides to us. And these next slides deal with college acceptances and college attending. So there's a pretty extensive span of years. Yeah. That's when I started. That was my first year. These are all the years that I've been here. I just realized that now. And you can see that there's been a real earnest effort. We've been talking about college competitiveness. That's been something that's been a topic at many of the board meetings I presented at. It's not something that we obsess. We really think it's important for the social and emotional well-being of the students. This is not, but we do think it's important to be prepared, to have information, and to be in a program that's going to allow you to afford you as many options as possible. So this does not mean we're putting it in the face of saying you must apply this hard school, you must do this. This is just getting information to people. And the department, even in the past 1 year, with the work that Linda has done, has really transformed their approach to doing this in a very healthy way. But you can see that this is where they are going, where they're opting to go. So about 2/3 are opting to go to that. But what's more important is looking at the acceptances of where they got accepted to, which is this. So you can see in this past year, 53 were accepted to the most competitive, 125 to the highly competitive. So 83% of the students, of individual students, were accepted to the top 2 tiers of schools. And so I show this next chart to show you the change just so you can see that although 53 were accepted, only 35 attended. So those are the same numbers from the past two slides put onto one slide. Just so you can see that although they were accepted the most competitive, for whatever reason they opted to go to a different school, of the 125, only 56 attended that. So many of them would have attended like the most competitive. And there's many factors for that. But that's just the data that we can get from Naviance to see where the kids are getting into and then ultimately where they are attending. And then last year I presented this slide, so I just wanted to update you. It's really fascinating to see just the consistency. You know, the system is really at an equilibrium in terms of who's engaging in, you know, interscholastic athletics. I think a much better slide that I'm going to give to you next year is actually looking at, as I said before, the individual students and saying, of the 220 students, how many of them are doing something, who's doing nothing, because you'll see it's a core group who are doing everything, overextended, and we are still missing. And it's like, what do we need to do for that missing? And that's, I think, a better way of looking at the data. Versus, I'm happy a third of the school is involved in music. I love that in athletics. But what does that number really mean if you tweak it by students versus by program? You get a little bit more accurate picture of the extent that students are engaged. I'd rather be able to tell you that instead of saying that this many people are involved, let's say, of the entire class, this many are really embracing what the school offers beyond the academics. I'll go quickly through these. As you know, and you heard briefly mentioned, we had a pretty significant revision to our security protocols and procedures. You know, beyond the technical and beyond the technology, much of this has to do with the training of the people and how we behave, how we talk about it. There's been, you know, a lot of work with the team, with the faculty, and getting everybody to understand procedures and protocols, and just greater sense of awareness. You know, when we present to the students, we say it's just situational awareness. It's something that is just part of the fabric of who we are. Much of the shifts in this regard have to do with human behavior, and less just about things. It has a lot to do with how we think and how we approach it on a daily basis. Even with the communication with the radios, we've had a lot of good changes in protocol to keep the building safer. We are currently looking at the redesign of our school transcripts. We had a shared decision today, and I thought this would be an easy topic. It is not an easy topic. It's going to be a work in progress. It's going to be a recommendation that we bring to Peter. You know, once we continue to work through that committee, the committee has a really nice broad range of student representation, parents, teachers on that, so we're going to be making some suggestions. Our transcripts really look like there's something from like 1970 on that, so there's a lot of opportunity there. We are preparing to change, there's some shifts in the assessments, so the science assessments will be shifting. The global assessment, as you know, is going to be changing as well, so we have a lot of work and planning for that transition. We're also looking at the continuum of services for special education. So that's something that the department is looking at. You know, are we still meeting the needs of the students and doing it in a way that is most in their best interest in terms of the organization of the groupings? You know, there's been lots of discussion about the skills. So that's something that the department collectively is looking at with the faculty members at the high school. And then common assessments and common grading practices. Each of the department leaders, all of which are here, we've sat down, we've looked at to making sure that if you're in a course that the grading procedures, expectations, the assessments in the course are common, so that it's not a luck of the draw of who you get. So we're really doing a lot of work to standardize that so that it's clearer for parents to understand how that grade is derived, what does that grade mean, and that includes all of those little irksome things that I'm sure you hear lots about in terms of the portal, when it's updated, what's included, how clear is all of that. So there's a lot of work happening in that area. It's definitely one of those things that is going to be an important one for the interests of looking at course performance, like looking at student grades across teachers, and also in terms of just better and more clear communication with families and students about how they're doing in the class. We're looking at honor societies and the clarity of the communication and application conditions. There's a lot, if you have anyone who's been involved in honor societies now, there's a lot of demands, a lot of strings attached in terms of the number of hours and the kind of conflicting. It's almost impossible for a student to be able to do everything we're asking them to do. So we want to kind of consolidate that and really think outside the box in terms of not just collecting hours. We see we're forcing students just go out and find an opportunity to get someone to sign for that. We want to have a more quality experience. We've learned a lot through the CAST program in IB that we want to apply into the honor societies. So this is all work that we're going into. We're reviewing the academic integrity policy. That is something that is new as of 2000, and it was created in 2015. So that's just going through a revision and making sure that it is meeting its goal of educating students about proper academic citation, and just understanding even things in terms of their academic responsibility of honesty, not cheating, things like that. We've really worked on this policy a lot. It's going to go through a revision. And finally, we just want to think about how we're using time in the building. I know I've talked about that a few times at the board level. We've taken some steps. We've engaged the faculty in the conversation, trying to solicit from them some of the models that they have experience with, either as a teacher, as a student teacher, as a student themselves, or as a parent in another district. Really looking at, are we making the best use of the time with the students in this standard organization that we've been. We think it's long overdue of just asking that question, and it is part of the strategic plan. So we're trying to take some concrete steps toward that. And that concludes the slides. The kids are doing really well, and now I have a lot of other backup data. If there's any questions that you have, I hope I can answer them.
Great. All right, thank you so much for that incredibly thorough discussion of how our students are doing and the background that you brought to us to make those numbers really have much more life to them. I appreciate the effort that obviously went into putting that together for us. It is always a topic of interest to the board, and I'm sure we have trustees that have things they'd like to ask or share about it, so I will open it up to them now to see what they have. Is there anyone this way? Bridge? Sure, please. And then Joanna, we'll get you.
First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I do appreciate the work that went into it, and it's encouraging seeing some of these results. As you know, I probably have some very specific kinds of questions to ask. In looking, last year we had a presentation about melding the IB and the AP program and co-seating classes.
Right.
And some classes were appropriate for co-seating, and others we thought perhaps we would separate out. And the one that kind of sticks out in my head right now in looking at the numbers is the chemistry class, because it isn't a question of staffing, because it's the same person who's an excellent teacher doing the work. But if you look at what happened to the AP scores once we went to IB, they just sort of dropped tremendously. So is there any consideration of maybe going back to just going to
Yeah,
the
I mean,
AP
absolutely.
chemistry class?
There is absolutely, that is something that we would, I'm open to really anything, as I said, my whole goal is that whatever they're in, that they're achieving. I think one challenge that we have, and we have found this in physics, is the numbers of students, because the pool that we have that we're beginning with is already a very small number. Even in our biggest years, it's still in the teens. So I worry about how that falls out, meaning we may have one with 11, one with 3, and then what do we do with that 3?
Right.
But that's definitely something we're open to. The teacher's voice is prominent in that, decision making, and that's something that we're continuing to review. I think at this point, we're in a place of optimism based on what we learned from last year's assessment, because I think we're in a real period of learning how those things exist together. And I think in some it's very natural. Biology, it's very natural. I think in chemistry, it isn't. But I think that the teacher really has a good understanding of why that is, and is going, above and beyond. We have and some additional time in how we're using the science faculty. And so just knowing that those students need a little bit additional kind of preparation. So I think he's got a concrete plan for addressing that. That's going to be, as far as I'm concerned, this year's going to be telling. And I think that we'll have a little bit better data to go on. But we really rely on the faculty member examining the curriculum, because he understands it best in making that recommendation. And he was pretty confident that they would do well on both of those. So I think that it's definitely on the table and something we would consider. My only concern would really be enrollment and making sure that we have enough to sustain both.
Sure, no, I
Yeah.
understand that completely, because that particularly, once the IB program was established in the science department, that actually became problematic for some of the disciplines within
yes.
science.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Joanna, thank you.
Thank you, Albert, for a very professional and thorough presentation, particularly the commitment throughout your presentation to individual success, which I think is so important. I got a little bit lost on the physics, and you talked about a plan to bring up those scores. Could you just repeat that for me or share some of that plan with me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I can. No. I think that it's our job to match people's talents and strengths with the courses that they teach. And I think that, we had some pretty significant retirements in that area. We also had a massive amount of turnover. It was almost every year, and Rich was on many of those hiring committees where we had a lot of turnover in the department. So I think in some regards, we have changed teaching assignments a lot in that area, and I think we were making sure that we have the talents matching the course better. And that's really one of the biggest plans. And what I was saying was, we look at the data across all of the teachers. So we had a real good understanding of like what's working, what are the approaches that are working really well in that class. So we know kind of what that program needs to be successful. So we tried to match the talents of the faculty that we have. There's a new faculty member last year. You may or not. I don't know to what extent the board was aware. We actually had a retirement on the first day of school of a physics teacher that we had to kind of really respond to. And the person who taught the course actually had the strongest results of all the physics, the one that kind of filled in. So the bottom line is that we really look at how the kids did in a lot of different ways, and primarily by teacher, and then using that, we make assignments for the following year to match the strengths with the program.
Okay.
Is that?
That makes sense,
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay.
Thank you, and just certainly acknowledgement for the overall improvement across the board and some of the
Thank you.
scores. Great job.
Let's see who else hasn't had a chance to say something.
I do, but why don't you start with Lisa?
I'll
And
go.
then we'll go way down in order. Might make more sense.
Right.
Or,
I'm probably going to pick some of the more exceptions to the report. Thank you for adding the special ed component. It's nice. I would have asked for it if I didn't see it, but one question that stands out to me is what are the number of students with IEPs that are classified in our school that have high capacity in certain academic areas and maybe more average or more challenges in another? How many kids with IEPs actually take AP and IB courses, or even honors when you're looking at it?
I don't want to give a number. I can get that. I will be more than happy to give you that
That would be
number.
great.
I've actually looked at the number, and I was surprised by, in a good way, of the students. Because we even had students with IEPs who have engaged with the diploma program.
Yep.
I mean, it's because what an IEP means, I think people have one vision in their head, but it's very complex. And our students that's where the beauty of the program is making sure that whatever those goals are, they're meeting them. I would love to, I can prepare that as kind of like a follow-up, and I'll submit that data. I think that's just, as I started digging into the special ed data, I started really looking at where are those students
Right.
and what are they doing. That's what led me to believe. I actually did the same thing that's why I did the reading, and I actually went through the ENL population. Just the sample size was so small. But for my own learning, we're really looking at that to see, are they accessing the highest possible reaches? Because language shouldn't be a barrier to challenge.
Right.
In terms of even look at ENL, just as though similar to with the students with an IEP. I can present that. I don't have that ready at the ready, so I don't want to suggest.
But that's just,
that.
it popped out to me because you included it.
Yeah,
in the
definitely.
thing. I'm also wondering, where are we, because I'm looking at some of the base data that you gave us in August, in computer science offering, and how many kids
I have that. The numbers are so small because the first cohort of students is just in that course now. We had last year was the first year that we had the computer science teacher. So the students in her IB Year 2 class will be sitting for the IB exam. The Year 1 will be taking the AP exam. I actually have all of that. The numbers are just the numbers of kids. Like last year, the computer science, we only had one
Yeah.
student who got a 4.
Yeah.
On that. And so you'll see the numbers of students taking that are going to increase. We're actually going to be offering a second AP Computer Science, the AP Computer Science Principles of Computing? It's after the intro course. There's only going to be a lot of momentum in the computer science. We have a fantastic, faculty member. The kids are really excited. The department is working on some other electives to really get the kids, because kids are going to be coming into the high school with a lot of background. And so we are more than prepared to handle that capacity-wise. We've got seats ready for them.
Because that was my next question. What's the plan for expanding?
Yeah, we are ready. We are so ready. I know that we've talked a lot about the things that are happening at the middle school. The high school is completely poised from a capacity standpoint to fill up those courses.
Because we're looking, we see our robotics kids, and a lot of them are doing programming, their own coding for that. Now, is that something they've just taken on outside of school on their own to participate?
Some. It's really, we actually had a student the year before, we didn't even offer it as a school, who just took the computer science AP. But yeah, some do. But I think that as a system, we're really ready to support that. Because the one thing that the IB course does, especially Year 2, that most kids don't think that they want to know, but they need to know, is the networking aspect, like the broader thing. Beyond just you individual working with that is the system, the computer systems and the networking and all that. And that's what Year 2 does. So it's a really interesting course. And now that we are offering the AP and the IB, they're really going to be able to walk out of here with a great foundation. But we have the capacity for that, for a massive expansion, actually.
What are your plans for, I guess it's part of guidance and understanding how students are maybe coming out of 10th grade algebra trig, how to guide them to that IB math, because that IB math studies figure, that was incredible.
So one of the things that we learned when we profiled the students who are meeting with success is there's actually a nexus between 10th grade and 12th grade. So that Algebra 2 year is critical. And so if you look at the numbers of students who are in Algebra 2 Trig H, the honors course, that really is the population of students who, with all expectation, is heading toward the AP historically, and I'm talking for at least the decade that I've been here. That's the population of students who are going to take AP Calculus, AB or BC. What's happening now is in 11th grade, half of them are going into the wrong course. So that is where we've really drawn, it's not looking from 11th to 12th, it's looking at 10th grade and understanding the fuller sequence of that. So I think even on the flow chart, we've made a correction on that. So those individual conversations with students are going to be much more like, look, this is where you have to go. And in all honesty, it's just raising that expectation of achievement and demystifying the difficulty or all of that. And I think, again, IB is actually still relatively new, and we're just so proud of how well the kids are taking to it, especially like in the humanities side. It's a very easy connection, but like on the math, there's a little bit of fear of math in general, and so we have to really demystify what that means. I think they're just thinking, oh, it's really, really, really too much, and that has a lot to do with education. That has a lot to do with how the 10th grade teachers present it to their students, because the students really trust the teachers that are with them. They know their level. And we have plans, and we actually are already doing that. They're going into each of the classes of the year of 10th grade to tell them about the offerings in 11th grade. But that's really where the connection is. It's not the 11th to 12th. It's the 10th grade.
10th grade
to 11th. Yeah.
Let's hear from everybody before. Tim, you have something?
I got. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a few questions, and maybe I'll just ask a couple of them for the time being, but we'll see.
Please, yes.
One of the things that I was most impressed with was the turnaround in the AP statistics class. And you said you had the teacher went through the score report and adjusted instruction based on that score report. I know, this was a kind of a abridged version of what we received in August, and there were, other AP courses that were included in that where, the numbers weren't as strong as some of the numbers that you presented in the courses just now. And I'm wondering if you're using a similar approach in those particular classes.
Yeah, definitely, and that's where I tried to be consistent in terms of I applied a rule. I didn't include any of those any of the ones that are not part of the regular program. But absolutely, like I said before, psychology. I mean, each of the departments, we had an end of year. It was over the summer after we got those results back. We had a sit down with all of that, and that included things like AP Stat, AP Lit, the psychology. Environmental science is always something that we're looking at. And again, it's a small number, but the students should be performing at a higher level on that. So the report that I gave you all that has the comprehensive, that's really our working tool. What I presented tonight is like the core program. But I included AP Stat primarily because that is an option in 12th grade. For some students, that is their math in 12th grade. So that fit, to me, the rule of it's part of the normal program because it's considered the math.
Right, no, I get that. And I think the same is true probably for U.S. government and politics as well. I mean, students do take that for their senior career.
That's another, U.S. government is another one of those areas. So the teacher went to training this year. That's an area where that's the option that they're taking, because we do not want students going from IB in 11th grade to Regents Government. They're going to go to AP Gov or they're going to go to IB year 2. If they're in AP Gov, our expectation is that the performance is higher. That is a severely underperforming exam, the government exam. And that's something, I actually met with a teacher today about that course, and we're monitoring the department. It's constant, looking at what are we doing in the course to ensure that we don't have a surprise on that. Well, the difference with statistics is that teacher, in terms of the readiness and familiarity with the course, had taught the non-AP version of that, was absolutely stunned by the performance because she really knew how she anticipated the kids would do. It got that instructional plan report, looked at the individual students, figured out what happened, and had a carved up plan. It was much more direct. The Gov AP actually has transitioned at the same time. So in some ways, we really, we have a lot of catching up to do, but that's happening now. So for the students in that course this year, that correction is happening now.
Okay. The other, when you present the data, I know, and again, we got it in the comprehensive report. You're squeezing together the 5, 6, and 7 scores on the IB. When you look at the 7s in particular, there are very low numbers of students scoring a 7. Is it just very unusual for?
It is. They're in the real world. They're called unicorns. No one gets 7s. That's why I know something's wrong with math studies with 13 7s out of 40 kids. Something's wrong because you get 1, 2. Some schools will have. When I go to principals meetings, IB schools will have an entire testing season with no 7s. That's normal in many places. A 7 means it's an exquisite level. We actually had a language student score a 7 in Spanish. This was not a heritage speaker, which is absolutely, Carrie saw that. Yeah, the 7s are very, very, very rare. A 5, 6 is considered like a 4 or 5 on the AP, and that's why we are just really pleased with the number of 6s on the IB.
Okay.
That's how we separated it the way that it is. As 4 is considered like passing, 5, 6 is considered mastery.
Okay. And just jumping to the end of your presentation where you had that one slide with students engaging in arts and athletics. I didn't catch if you gave, because I remember I think it was Trustee Labate last year had said, give the number that are not involved in anything. And I know you were speaking very quickly at the end there, getting through this, and I didn't hear whether you said a percentage of students who are not doing anything.
I have a little bit, I've been starting my study on it. I've been doing sample groups, so I've been looking at populations. So I've been looking at I looked at the students with IEPs. I looked at things that I haven't yet taken sophomores and then gone through, because what I had done prior to this is I actually looked at every single student in the particular group. So I took the seniors and I just took every single student and tried to figure out who is involved in the club, who is involved, who is on a sport. You know, and it's just very tedious because we're going by individual student and asking every single office, do you know what the student does, asking every single advisor. So it's been a challenge. But that's the only way to really get that, is that you have to go through each one of those. We don't just have the rosters of, we have some attendance sheets.
But I mean, and I forget what you call it, it's not homeroom, what is the?
The extended third period.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
I mean, you could distribute a survey to
Yes.
students, I think, and
Yeah.
just ask.
Well, I
them
think I think that's much more
activities
valuable data. I totally think that's more interesting to see who is that, like who is not connecting. I think that is critical.
Okay. And my last question, I think it's at the end of your presentation, it says a look into key areas of refinement, redesign of our school transcripts, including the discussion of courses, weighting, and consistency. Can you just elaborate on what you mean by consistency? What the goal is there?
It's very practical in nature in terms of, are we consistent philosophically with the transcript reports and doesn't report. One of the things that, and this was the topic of the committee today, is some students here take algebra in 8th grade. It shows up on their transcript as a course they took in middle school, they get high school credit for it, they get a P. Some students take algebra in high school in 9th grade, for either maybe they came from a different school, or they were repeating the course, or they took math 8, and they get a grade on there. So there's a little bit of an inconsistency there. So we have to kind of make sure that we check that out. Like, you know, and also just in terms of how the courses are even displayed on the page. That was one thing that I think they're already working on. It takes 4 years to cycle through a transcript revision because you have to do it with a cohort. But even right now, the display of courses in the year is very unorganized, and so just the consistency in the display.
Okay, so that was specific to the transcript.
Oh, yeah, that's all specific to the
Have
to
there
the transcript.
been discussions concerning consistency between classes in terms of just grading standards?
Yeah, that's actually another bullet on there, is the common grading practice. That's an area that we're constantly tweaking. And I have actual information I can show you department by department where we're at with that. And my expectation at the faculty meeting is we've got to move. If this is where we're at now, if we're at the point where all that's common is the midterm, the next expectation is the common quarterly, and just making that. So there's movement in every single department from every single teacher to get those in alignment so that every course is the same. That's where the goal is.
I'm not necessarily looking for that. Just, sometimes you can have huge variations between one teacher whose average grade might be a 94 and another is teaching the same course and the average grade is 83 or 84, and that's year after year after year. I don't know to what extent that's an issue, but do you look at that?
We do.
That sort of thing?
I've looked at that many times. Anytime something like that comes on my radar. I mean, I just did one of those this first quarter after report cards were generated. We'd gotten some phone calls, so I actually went through every single score, laid it all out, averaged out all 4 classes, and looked at the data. We do that. That's very common. And then we kind of pry into that and say, like, how did that come to be? What was it? Was it did one teacher use total points? Did one teacher have categories? And is that how because if you only gave one quiz and the other gave 4, and it's a 10% category, that one quiz for one teacher is worth 10 points, the other teacher, each quiz is worth 2.5 points. So those little things like that can have a significant impact on the overall average. And so bringing to light those things is what our job is to kind of have that bird's eye view of saying, here's where that inconsistency is, and not one way is right, one way is wrong, but that we've got to get some alignment on what we're doing there, because it's unintended consequences with that. So that's a big area of focus that every single department head and I have looked at their department to see where that movement's going to take place. Each year, we're making steps.
And that could be a result of different standards as well, though.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
But everything is expected to be based on the rubric, and any teacher can tell you where that was derived from. And so some departments even do collaborative grading and scoring. They have model papers, anchor papers. So there's we're getting closer even on that. because it shouldn't just be arbitrary.
And just one last question on consistency. With regards, do you look at students' course grade and compare it to what the student scores on an AP exam or an IB assessment? And just in general, to see if there's
Well-
consistency there, where a student who's, say, getting an 80 in the course gets a 5 on an AP exam, or a kid who's getting a 95 in the course is getting a 2 on an
Yes.
AP exam. I mean, that sort of
Yes,
consistency.
we are, that is something, that is also a new area of data assembly that we hadn't done previously. Last year, that question came up, so I started just running that report of looking at that. And that's where you see things like in AP Gov. You look at how the kids do in the course, you look at that AP, and there's definitely, a disconnect on that. And that's where the importance of having the consistency in the course is also critical, because the AP data is just all the total group, where the course grades are very individualized with sections and teachers. Because I've even seen some inconsistency section to section, not even teacher to teacher.
Okay.
But that is something that we do look at, that we do have that data presented, so we can see if there are patterns of aberrations. And the cool thing about transitioning from AP is what IB does. IB actually requires teachers to do a predicted grade, and that's also interesting to see, because they'll generate a report for us to see the extent to which there's discrepancy from the predicted grade to the actual grade. It is very interesting, because they will recalibrate our scores if a teacher is over-predicting. It's a really, interesting thing that we look at. And I think that's a real healthy thing for a teacher to do, is to really look at the standard to measure and make a prediction based on evidence and data, and then to see if that is aligned with the external accountability.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so I have a couple of things. I just want to pick up on a couple of things that Trustee Madden just started on. On the IB scores, I think from my experience with students going to college, that I think the 5, 6, 7, the 5s can be viewed, depending on the subject matter, more like a 3, depending on the university and the subject matter. So I think it would be helpful in presenting the data to have it the way we had it in the other report, especially for the, for the public, because I have it broken down by 4, 5, 6, and 7s. And my own experience has been that the 5s don't necessarily get you the credits, just like in a college, just like a 3 doesn't necessarily get you.
It's just like
college,
a 4 doesn't necessarily get you college credit either. I mean, it's very institutionally, there's variability institution-wise. It also depends if it's an HL or an SL. A 5 and an HL is different than a 5 and an SL.
Right, but I just think my point is not so much whether they get credit or not. My point is that I think there's not as clear a delineation in terms of how the scores are viewed when it's a 5. Depending on the subject matter, the course, like you said, an HL and SL course, it's just not as bright line.
I can present it any way that
I
anyone
just think it
wants
would be helpful for the public in the next go-around to see where they are in terms of the number of 5, a breakdown on those those numbers.
I will also point out, though, we have the, we have lots of comparative data of both, in terms of what the mean score is. And we will put in the time and effort to contact institutions to see how they view a 5. We'll do all of that work, because we can call around and make sure that because the average score in many of them globally is in the 4s on much of them. So for IB standards, the world averages, and some of them are in the 3s, the low 4s. So in their standard, a 5 is considered a very, very successful achievement on that. But I'll present that data, any which
Just a
way.
point of interest. It's the same thing with the AP scores. Depending on what school you go to, some of them view, they give you the credit, but you still have to do the coursework. It lets you take a higher course. It is all very subjective, but I found it was a little grayer with the IBs than it was.
There are more numbers.
There are more numbers, right? So it'd be more, I think, just because the nature of the
Yes.
grading system, it might be more helpful
Yes.
to have that data broken out. And then you can also see from year to year,
Yes.
that maybe there are more students getting 5s and 6s than there were before.
definitely.
So I think, I just think it would be interesting because it's a new curriculum.
It's the same
to
as
see the growth,
showing the students, because AP with the 3, 4, 5, it was just like I showed the slide of showing
And,
threes and fours.
fours,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree with that. I think it's a good measure to see that shift, because we want to see that growth. I'll present that any way that I'm asked. I love doing this stuff. I'll give it to you any way you want it.
It's a suggestion, but I think it would be helpful for, because people do look in on it and they, on the video, and it might be interesting for them to have it
Okay.
as well as the people here.
Okay.
In terms of consistencies, one of the things that I had found was not only in terms of grading, but how the coursework is handled. So some teachers will do more of the coursework in the classroom, and other teachers will assign it outside the classroom, which puts sometimes very unfair burden on these students who are taking many high-level courses. So how they pace the course, I mean, I know you can't make it all cookie cutter because it all depends on your student body and teaching style, but it would be helpful if there was more consistency in how the work was assigned and how it was done in terms of in the classroom as opposed to after school. That was just one area you might want to look at. One of the questions I did have for you, and I have this every year, is tutoring. So I have spent a small fortune on tutoring. I'm sure other parents have as well. And what these scores never tell us is who gets tutored. And I would really like that data, because the scores are the scores, but the scores can get skewed by students who are getting tutored outside the classroom because their needs are not being met inside the classroom. And that would be data that we really should be looking at. And I don't know, can we survey the students? Obviously, you can't require them to give that information, but it would be very interesting to me to know, because every year I had at least one math or science tutor for my kids, and I know there were other parents in that same contingent.
We could do that. I would also then, we'd also have to measure then the effectiveness of the tutor, because I think there's a variability of the effectiveness.
I'm thinking about buying Mr. Galati a revolving door for his front door for Christmas.
I don't think that, if I could just jump in for a second, I don't think
I'm concerned
it's,
about who responds to the survey. It's going to be tilted one way or the other. This data does not sound.
I think it would be an interesting, parents have asked about it, that they want to know.
Great data to have, but the data we're going to get.
Well, if we don't try, we don't know what the data is, right? If we don't ask the question, then we don't know whether the answer is going to be reliable or not, do we?
Yes, well, if you can't get 100% response, you don't know which people were more inclined to respond, and you don't know which way your data got skewed, and your data set's small to start with, is my concern. But let's set it aside. You and I don't need to get into a back and forth about
No, I just think it would be a question that we should, I think it should be a question we should ask.
No, I'm sorry, it's not public comment.
The other thing I will say is that I'm encouraged that, the math scores in AP, in AP Calculus are coming up. They're still not where they were in either category. I think physics, even on the Regents level, and chemistry, even on the Regents level, is problematic. And I think that it really goes to the quality of instruction in many instances, because if you break it out, the data in a certain area, you could, in a certain manner, you can see where the holes are. And we have the resources, and we have the staff, administrative staff, that we can remedy that problem by intensive instruction. It's not just pairing a teacher with where their skills are. I understand that. I think that's a good start. But I think just like the teacher in AP Stats, who it was her first year, she went back and she looked at it and she figured out how to fix the problem. I don't think we do that enough on a consistent basis with our teachers. Because year after year, you'll see the same problems reoccurring. And it's very, very frustrating for students and for parents. So, you know, you say to yourself as a parent, okay, every year I get one teacher that maybe is problematic. But that's that child's 1 year to get that course, right? And it's not fair, no matter what level the course is, for that child to not get a full experience. And we have the staff to fix it. And we really need to focus on that, because at the end of the day, it's about academic achievement. Unless we're all in this game for academic achievement, and we believe in the mission, and we believe that every child can succeed, and we do everything we can for that child, then we are failing. And there are consistent spots of failure. There's consistent areas of success too, but we really need to look at those holes, and we really need to figure out a way to fix those holes. And math and science in a day and age when STEAM is so important and where the careers are. I mean, if you look at those math and science scores compared to other districts on Long Island, we're just not getting it. And so when 3 kids apply to Carnegie Mellon and can't get into Carnegie Mellon, that's a problem. And the reason why those problems occur is because I think that when we have those holes, it not only affects the students individually, but it affects our student body as a whole, because there's a perception that our children are not as prepared or not as smart as children in other districts. And I will tell you that these kids are just as smart as other kids. So I would like to see a plan on how we're going to address those problems. Also on the SATs.
At some point, I need to, I've got trustees.
Yeah,
that
okay,
have
that's fine. I'm happy to
I'll
pass it
I'll
off and come back.
I'm going to hit trustees that haven't asked, and then I think Rich had more, and you, and there are other people with more. Thank you, Dave.
So, I don't have a lot to ask and to add. I think that your presentation was very thorough, Albert. I appreciate the work. I appreciate what you put into it. I know that the compromise between being concise and also diving deeply is a difficult one. And I also know that you could have continued and gone into deeper dive for another couple hours here. So I appreciate the way you gave us the information. I don't want to belabor individual things because the information you provided, I think, speaks for itself in many ways. We see these charts, we see where we are, and I guess I would express my appreciation that, number one, you are pointing out many areas of success for our students, and there are a lot of areas of success and improvement for our students, but also being forthright about areas that we need to focus. And this board has discussed on numerous levels that it is an important emphasis for us to focus our resources and attention on those areas where we need additional assistance and we need additional support, and we need to do, based on your recommendation, the recommendation of our administration, what it takes to improve those areas. But I don't want those areas, which of course are always the ones that get the focus, to overshadow all the good work that is being done in our schools. I appreciate where you started with the idea that an educational experience for our students is not about everyone being measured against the same yardstick, but it's against each student being measured on where they started and where they finished. We've been having debates for years about how teachers are evaluated in this state, that they shouldn't be evaluated based on some base metric. There's nothing to do with where they start and where they finish and the trajectory of those students within those classrooms. So I really appreciate you highlighting that at the beginning. And just one more thing that I thought you mentioned at the end that was very important, is the identification of those students who don't have an active participation in the schools. We talked about that from a wellness perspective, but I would bet that it also is almost the same results from an academic perspective, that those students who are joining, whether they're joining 1 or 2 things, or whether they're joining 12 things, there's a real correlation between the performance and the degree to which they are, I won't say happy, but the way that they are actually getting something out of their overall academic experience that translates into success both in college and later on in life. So I'd like to continue to see that focus on seeing students participate. But overall, I appreciate this report. It was very thorough, and I know the amount of work you and your team put into it. So I thank you.
I'll add to that point that there was a lot that was very heartening in this, and I want to echo Lisa on the inclusion of the special education numbers was terrific and interesting and great to see, and we appreciate your thoughtfulness in including that. I think there was a lot of good news, the turnaround in calculus, which was obviously you focused on, and you pulled it off. It was terrific. The IB language, the English HL scores are terrific. But on the flip side, the idea that you pointed out that the math studies scores were too good was a new and interesting point that I appreciated as well. I think, ideally, I would be really interested in seeing, right, what % of kids do participate in something, and not just in a vacuum, but, the trend, but I appreciate the difficulty in getting the data. And likewise, the % of kids that we have participating in a high-level class of some kind. And again, to look at the trend. I know I had a lot of trustees that had even more they wanted to talk about, and I'll go this way first. I will point out to all of you that we're going to hit about the hour-and-a-half point on Albert's presentation. And so you may wish to keep that in mind as you focus on your priorities. Trustee Galati, did you, some time ago, I believe you had something else you wished?
Thank you. When Joanna had mentioned something about the physics, it sparked something. In terms of the data that we're looking at for the Regents exams, and you noted it in your report, our quote-unquote best equipped students for that exam don't take it.
That's correct.
Why would we not
We've-
want them to
that-
take it?
They are taking it this year. That we have changed that. They are,
Because-
because I know they used to, when it was the freestanding AP, they are going to be taking it this year.
Yeah, because I work with a lot of kids from all over, a lot of these different schools, and basically every one of them in an AP program will take the Regents,
Yeah.
even though it's their first class. So that certainly would make the numbers.
Yes, and I feel comfortable doing that because this will be their first time taking the physics Regents as well. It's their first physics. So it's completely appropriate, and that is going to be a guaranteed, that's going to be significant because the others, that's why we're looking at the peer schools. You have to look at who the population is who's taking those courses, because on both ends, like in our case, our strongest physics students aren't taking the physics Regents. Whereas in other cases, you could look, some students who may be weaker in like chemistry may not be sitting for the Regents because they're in like just chemistry, not chemistry Regents. And so I think it's always important to look at the school, and our focus has been like all, chemistry for all, physics for all, and we're trying to find expanding those numbers. But it is true that our strongest physics students have not taken that Regents exam. So this Regents exam is purely the Regents level physics.
Right.
Yeah, and to your point, I think we saw that in the algebra data, like when we compare ourselves to different neighboring school districts, like the % of their kids that they put in algebra in 8th grade has a tremendous.
Yeah, and I didn't even include all of it, but there's other little things, like our high school algebra, 100% passing. But that's the repeat course, so there's a lot more. I could, like David said, I could be here all night long telling you a lot of these things.
I would enjoy that, but.
I know.
It's an audience.
But there are those little things, like I'm glad that Rich brought that up, because that really changes the neighborhood of where you display when you do compare yourself to the peer groups. And I can assure you that the names on that list are having the students in the AP Physics course take that physics
They
region.
certainly are.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
the fact that we can even be in the mix without that is
this has some significance, and I can assure you that those are going to improve even if we didn't include that. And I'll actually present the data next year with and without the IB, just so you can see a direct comparison, and then I'll do the total, if that makes, that'd be a fair representation. So that slide will represent just the region,
Goes in
then
the
I'll,
year over
yeah,
year. Yeah.
I'll add a double bar so you can see that.
Thank you.
Can I just, one more?
Sure, please.
One thing that I didn't notice in here, and this is just sort of peripheral, SAT 2 exams, can you just comment briefly on what we're doing with that in terms of numbers of kids, how we're doing?
I mean, if you're comfortable with this, I know Linda has a presentation in January. I'll get that. I'll basically just give you that document. Similar, I can just print it. I can print a report of that. But I'd rather not. I'd rather
No,
just give you the report.
That's fine, thank you.
Yeah.
If you get it to me, I'll get it out.
Yeah.
Rich here.
I'm good, thank you.
Joanna, you're fine still. Lisa?
I had another.
thought maybe you had another.
Yes. I was very intrigued by your bullet point about, it's probably a more macro level planning thing for you, and I think you and I have talked about this on occasion. How time is used and organized at the high school, and I think we talked about one time doing blocks, humanities blocks versus math, science type blocks, because I don't even understand how kids can really get organized in one period in a class. By the time they sit down, get organized, get to work, and then they break. And then you're on to, you're going from chemistry to AP Psych. What is your plan around?
So my intention is to give you a full written report this school year about our thinking. This year, you're not going to see architecture or a plan. I'm just going to be giving you some of what we've learned, some of the research that we've consulted. But what we're really concerned with is the amount of up and down, the amount of transition in a 9-period day, the amount of time getting settled, getting down, even just from, if you take orchestra, by the time you get your instrument out tuned, every day, just that time adds up. And same with getting into a class. You have the opening and the closing that happens. So we're looking at having longer sustained periods. And also from a wellness, although it requires stamina, it would eliminate that idea of having 4 tests in a day, because you aren't going to see in some of the schedule models. And we have no concrete model. We're just literally in the research phase. But our focus is on the wellness, so that the students can actually be present in that. And also from a transition standpoint, they're post-secondary institutions, they're going to require that stamina of that 55-minute block, or sometimes the hour.
An hour and a half.
Yeah. So I think that we're looking at just our responsibility to see what's going on with how time is being used and how flexible it can be for the students. But at this point, it's we're just engaging the teachers in the conversation. We are not at any formal approach. But
I think it's an interesting idea. I really do. Thank you.
Tim? I'm good for now. Trustee?
I do like the idea of the blocks of time we talked about. I think Chaminade does it, and even if you didn't do it as an individual class, maybe even as a humanities block or a math science block would be interesting. Transcripts, one of the things that someone has mentioned to me, maybe this is a more, just because you brought it up, years ago we eliminated ranking. Maybe that's a discussion that we should have against some of the kids who were applying to the more competitive schools needed it. Maybe not 1 through 20, 1 through 200, but maybe 1 through 25 if we expanded that. Just something for discussion, probably pretty controversial. Math studies and pre-calculus, going back to calculus, the math studies, does that prepare, are we finding that course, since it's an IB course, prepares the students sufficiently for calculus AB? Was that part of the issue in the
Our recommendation would be, it's possible on a case-by-case basis. Our recommendation would be no, and you'll see on the updated flow chart that would not be a pathway that we would recommend. It would feed most ideally into AP statistics. If the student wanted to take a higher level course in 12th grade, that would be the more appropriate sequence. But then again, it is very case-by-case. But we've really learned a lot about, it's possible. We do have additional time in that 11th grade year, so all of the IB courses have expanded time for math learning, but the SL course is more customized toward that. Both IB math courses are going to be going through significant revisions in the next 2 years, so that will be a good opportunity for us to kind of recalibrate with our student population about the appropriate pathways. But the SL course it completely prepares them for the calculus level.
I would anticipate that it would. My question is more for, I think there are limited opportunities for students in 11th grade with pre-calculus and with math studies to be properly prepared for calculus AB. So.
Yeah, I see that perspective. I think that there's actually opportunity to look at the pre-calculus course and ways for pathways into the AB that are more direct than from math studies.
Right, but and that's what I was going to say to you. Maybe we could look at strengthening that to
Yeah.
get more to get students. I think part of it is preparedness,
Yes.
right? That's
Totally.
part of the problem on the scoring. So you really need to get these kids properly prepared, and I don't think that the pre-calculus really prepares them.
Yeah, and I'll fully admit that's an area that we have a lot of opportunity. That's why, I would never come to you and say, oh my gosh, we have so many 7s in math studies. I see this as like we've got some sorting to do, and that really has a lot to do with the communication of the faculty members, with the department leaders, and the counseling department, and really having a better understanding of that. And we're going into the planning for next year already, and I think we have a real clear picture of what the messaging needs to be, that it's consistent from the classroom teacher to the counselor, and that is where the improvement is going to come. And also just making sure that the curriculum in the pre-calculus course is.
It has to come up. It really does have to come up. But I had some other things about the college profile and some of the other opportunities for earlier SAT workshops on essays and things of that nature. But given the hour and the time, we'll deal with that at the next presentation with the counseling.
Yeah, very quickly, I can tell you that is something that the department is working on, and we can really, there's a lot of opportunity there, and I know that in January, I'm sure you'll hear some of that, but, just in a conversation I had recently with Linda, there's a lot going on in terms of developing a purposeful sequence of introduction to those things that would be an assuring experience for all students in all 4 grade levels. So that's.
I think I will save that because I know we've been working on it, and there's a new director of counseling, and, Rome wasn't built in a day, so let's see what the plans are.
Okay. We can't thank you enough for
Thank
your
you.
time and your preparation and your time this evening and your thoughtfulness on this. Thank you, Albert. We really do appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is comments from the public. If you have thoughts or questions you wish to share with the board, if you will please come to the podium. We need your name and town of residence, and if you would address your comments to the board, please.
Hi, good evening. Jerry Romano, Seacliff. In previous discussions, you've said that one of the reasons North Shore is so much more expensive than surrounding districts is the small class size, right? Is that correct?
We, in 2 different presentations, went through a number of factors.
I can't hear you. You're not speaking into the mic.
I apologize. We've addressed Manhasset versus North Shore a couple of times, and one of the factors was class size.
Okay. So then you're spending tens of millions of dollars of this community's money, thousands of dollars of my community's money, above and beyond, and not producing amazing results. Why?
One of the factors, we've given 2 presentations in response to this. We listed a number of factors, and we also provided you with the test scores on the ELA and math for grades 3 through 8 for North Shore versus Manhasset, and our
No,
were
but
ter-
here's what
our
I'm saying.
scores were terrific.
I'm sorry. Here's what I'm saying is, the results are not amazing. You're spending, in my estimation, over 30% more than the county average, okay? You could tell me whatever your numbers are, and the results aren't amazing. So why would you continue having small class size Are the teachers weak? Are the students lack aptitude? What's the reason? How do you fix it? Okay? I can't be coming here like week after week, month after month, year after year, asking these same questions and not getting answers. Okay? Because the next time I come here, the police are going to take me out. All right? Because I'm not going to leave until I get the answer. All right? The next thing is, I tried not to laugh when I got the strategic plan. It was kind of funny. It reminded me when I was a manager like 30 years ago at CBS in New York. And I did this amazing presentation to my boss, and he threw me out of his office because I didn't tell him how much it was going to cost. Okay? That was a tactical plan that was mailed to everybody's home. It was one piece of what makes this school district run. What makes this school district work is the community. Without a community, you don't have students. Without students, you don't have a school. And without the community funding the school district, which we're required to do, you don't have a school. All right? So it was just kind of funny to read that. So the next time you ask 3,000 people to participate in putting together a strategic plan, make it 3,000 to 1 and ask me. I'd be more than willing to help. I don't feel I got a satisfactory answer when I asked why this school district has like almost a $29 million surplus in cash. And a school district like Manhasset, with 25% more students, has $9 million in surplus cash. I sent the board an email that aren't alarms going off in the board meeting? Aren't you saying why? How could that be so far out? Do you know why?
It's an interesting point, and we've addressed this in public before where we went through each of the reserves and what the point of each was. What we didn't discuss before was the state controller's concerns about Manhasset's cash reserves being too low, and on the report on their fiscal stability that the state controller's office put out, the points that they lost because of their lack of cash reserves. So that's some new information we have from when we talked about our own reserve funds.
But so then, if Manhasset has 25% more students, they should have $40 million in surplus cash, not 9?
I think you'd probably be very interested in looking at the controller's report.
No, but I'm asking you why you have $3,000 of my money that you're sitting on. Isn't that a reasonable question? That's a third of my property tax, my school taxes.
Of course it is.
But I keep coming here and asking these questions, and I'm not getting answers. Week after week, month after month, year after year, you're not answering me. Don't placate me. Don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. Don't spout numbers at me. Put them someplace where I can see them, the community can see them, and you give me a real explanation.
Sir, they're in the minutes and on the videotape when Dr. Giarrizzo went through all of the reserves with you during public
I
comment.
have nothing. I'm looking at the district website. There's no information about it.
Okay.
It's not. You're missing the point here. This is the same reason why you don't understand what an audit is. An audit is what, not why. Okay? Like I explained to you in the email, when you decided to give the superintendent a $6,000 a year car allowance to drive on our dime, the auditors didn't say, hey, that's not for education. Why did you do that? They don't care. It's the same way the superintendent in Roslyn flew on the Concorde to Paris. The auditors never asked why. They asked what. Money was spent. They go, oh, look, money was spent. It was budgeted, whatever it was. You clearly don't understand what an audit is.
I wish you had come to our internal audit meeting that we had.
No, I'm here now. I'm here now. This is the time I have. I was on a plane most of the day. I have a splitting headache. Okay, I got home a few hours ago. I've been gone all week. I'm here now to get my questions answered. This is the time. This is the public forum. If this is not it, tell me where it is. I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry. I'm really getting like I said, next time I will call the police and the media and have them waiting outside so they can arrest me, because I'm not leaving until you're going to give me my answers. I'm tired of this. I mean, how many times do you expect me to come here and ask these same questions over and over and over again? And is your plan, here's my last question of the night, is your plan now to go out and push through another budget with an under cap increase as the student population declines? Is that your plan?
Our Our budget presentations will begin in February. We look forward to your participation.
Thanks.
Justice, because I'm short. Hi, my name's Diana. I'm from Glenwood Landing, and I graduated North Shore in 2016. I'm currently a junior at Dartmouth College. And first, I want to thank Mr. Cousins, just because that was really, really well put from a student's perspective. I feel like you've always been really candid in terms of listening to students' voices and really working for the numbers that you showed. So I just want to thank you for that. Before I ask my original question, I wanted to quickly add on to a point Trustee Russo made about the tutoring, because I feel like that's a really important point. The National Honor Society is actually supposed to provide a group of overachieving junior and seniors to provide free tutoring for younger classmates through 20 hours of community service included in the National Honor Society program. So pretty much, if you want to put National Honor Society on your college application, on your resume, you have to do, or at least you're supposed to do, 20 community service hours of free tutoring, which is really important when you're thinking about equity for your students, because not all families can afford to hire a teacher for a tutor. So I think it's really important that we find a better system, maybe a Google Doc or something, where parents and students can submit something to request a free National Honor Society tutor, and then the students who need these tutoring hours can go into that portal and say, here are gigs, here are contacts that I can go tutor. So I think that's a resource that's really underutilized and something that could really help. I know that when I'm tutored and I hear other students explain to me, it's really valuable. So just wanted to quickly add that on. And because I'm a millennial, I'm going to read you something that I typed out on my cell phone. So, according to research by the CDC and the National Center for Education Statistics in 2016, ADHD is equally prevalent across genders, given it presents in different ways. However, male students ages 6 to 18 are almost 3 times more likely than girls and young women to be evaluated for, diagnosed with, and provided special education services for their ADHD and other learning disabilities. Throughout my 12 years as a North Shore student, my ADHD symptoms were quite apparent in the classroom and in my work. I was almost never able to read through and fully finish timed examinations. I was up past 2 a.m. nearly every night of 10th to 12th grade just to finish my homework. I had note-taking and task organization difficulties in class, and I rarely met deadlines. I also, surprise, never stopped talking. All of the extraneous energy and work I was doing to compensate for struggling with my disability and earning solid grades in spite of it eventually took an additional toll on my mental health. And when I spoke up about this as well, North Shore did not have adequate systems of resources or referrals in place for me to seek help either. I've spoken to several other female alumni who have had similar experiences, and not being able to successfully seek the evaluations, accommodations, or mental health treatment they needed for an equal opportunity until well into college. I'm grateful for my North Shore education in many ways, especially for preparing me with the skills to be a women's advocate and public speaker on my campus for equal opportunity and against gender-based harassment. I'm extremely grateful and lucky that I had teachers who really went out of their way to give me extra time on my physics quizzes during their lunch period, or when my handwriting was entirely illegible, let me read aloud my essays in AP History. But I recognize that not everyone has the privilege of AP Galati or AP Purvis. And when I got to things like the AP exam and like the SAT and like the ACT, where people need institutional accommodations who need certified support, I really struggle with those kinds of exams. So that said, my question for the board is twofold. First, how can we become more transparent about our special education procedures with students and faculty so that they're understood and accessible to students potentially in need of them, so that girls like my peers and I don't continue to slip through the cracks? And second, how can we provide more access or community connections to mental health resources to create a safer community where we can truly thrive?
Thank you. I don't have an answer, but I really appreciate the question very much, and I don't doubt at all the point you're making. I think it resonates with a lot of us. When you hear you speak like this, I think a lot of people were going like, yes, Dr. Giarrizzo, I have to give this to you.
How long are you home for?
2 weeks. If anyone needs a chem tutor.
Who needs a chem tutor?
If anyone needs a chem tutor,
Then she's here.
I'm here until New Year's.
Okay. So if you, what's that? Oh. If you wouldn't mind, before you leave tonight or tomorrow, right, get in touch with me or my assistant, Mrs. Campy, and we'll get you on my calendar with Mr. Cousins and Mr. Marino, our special ed director, and we'll talk more deeply about this and try to find some solutions to talk about some of the things that we're doing, because we are doing some things, but talk a little bit more deeply about what can be done. So that, if that's okay with you. Yes?
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. So you'll get in touch with me or Mrs. Campy, and we'll get that all arranged. And I assume you're home through the holiday?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
home until next trimester.
All right. So we'll see you. We'll be able to make that happen for you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much.
Can I just
appreciate it.
say something on that? I'm so glad that Diana brought it up. We had a similar experience in our home, and I think it's because people are uneducated about how ADHD presents itself in female. The symptoms are very different than in males. And in my home, my daughter wasn't diagnosed until the summer between her junior and senior year of college, and she's a completely different person. I think when a child is bright, it masks it because they succeed despite the disability. Yeah, and I, it was something that even I questioned and I brought to their attention, and I had the Vanderbilt scores done. So it's really a very important area, and there are many, I think, who, like yourself, suffered. You weren't alone, and thank you for bringing it to our attention, and it really has to be an area of focus. It's speaking of equity, right? That's one of our pillars of our plan, and this is a very, very important point.
And
Thank you.
our saving grace is only that we managed to teach kids to stand up and talk and come to things and tell us, thank you. We can't thank you enough. I believe we have other public comments.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dave, please, do you want to say something?
No, I thought Peter was going to move on.
Nope.
Hi, Rita Padaris from Glen Head.
Microphone.
Hi, I wanted to, first of all, thank you, the board, for taking the position of volunteering and all the time and effort you put in to better our community and the school, so thank you. I didn't bring anything prepared, but when the topic of tutoring came up, and I just sort of got the impression that the dialogue was heading towards, no, it can't be done, let's not look at it. I think it's something you absolutely should look into when you're considering the success of the students, is if the students are getting outside help, tutoring, and how that factors into the success. And Lisa, I'm sorry.
I know that public person looks a lot like someone named.
She brought up the Honor Society, which that was one of the points I was going to bring up, is that we have such a valuable resource in the school where I guess if there's families that can't afford to pay, or that there's our own students. I mean, I had a child that was studying till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning during midterm week because she was tutoring, and I would say to her, you don't have to tutor when you have your own finals or studying. She's like, no, but the kid is depending on me. So, I mean, you have kids that are devoted to the process. So I think that needs to get out there, that the North Shore students are here to help their peers. Sorry, I got off track thinking with that. Yeah, so, I mean, as adults, we turn our wheels and we're trying to figure out, how do we make the students' life more successful, better. I think a great resource is the students themselves. I mean, I think it'll help you get your wheels turning, and it'll save a lot of time and effort on your part. We have to figure out a way, I know it's hard, but we have to figure out a way to survey the students. And if it's not the current students because they may feel that it could hurt their grade, or because if they say something negative or not, then let's try to go after the students that have graduated already. Maybe at the end of the year, bring a stamped envelope and say, you know what, hold on to this till the end of your first year in college or something, and answer these questions for us. If I'm just going by my one recent graduate who is taking some hard courses, and she mentioned to me how great she was doing in her class, and especially compared to the average, how happy she was. And I'm sorry if I point you out, but she said it was Galati's chemistry class, that it was tough, and it helped her in college. These graduates remember their high school teachers, especially the ones that that are hard. And you know, it was an honor class that she was taking, she being a postgraduate, I thought that information was so valuable. And then on the other hand, where her hardest class she's finding is her bio. And for her, she didn't take it in high school, she took it in 8th grade. So she had to take 2 years of physics. She was in the IB, she took 2 years of physics and chemistry, and I forget what the other, the geology one. So that was a factor, and we knew that going in, that, so I just think those little things are can be very helpful, maybe to the staff, to the board, hearing from the graduate students how they found the high school helped or didn't help them. And I mean, I'm not one that starts the kid off with tutoring and has tutoring for my kids. I really avoid it. And I start to question myself, well, are they in the right class or not? So I'm not a proponent of getting tutoring along with starting school, and that's going to help you take this, you know, the big honors class or the high level. She had asked for a tutor, and somehow I guess we just forgot about it, whatever, she got along without it. But at the end of the year, when I had never gotten her a tutor, I had wondered, you know, how many students did have a tutor, and was that the difference with, you know, being in a high-level course? Is it because you have a tutor, or is it because you don't have a tutor? So I think the question of outside help, whether you're getting tutoring or some academic help in the home, I think that's a big factor in the success of our students, and I think we're missing out if we don't look at that.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we all agree that there's a
I know,
tutoring
and it's-
factor at play, and we just need to let the administrators figure out how to get at that information.
And I'm sure us parents, we would be willing to answer your surveys if you don't want to ask the students. I mean, we're a team. You do a lot of hard work, and we really appreciate it. Cousins and the staff, and you all do hard work, and I always appreciate the candid. I like when I see that a report points out our shortcomings and doesn't try to hide behind, like, just great reports. I don't think you grow that way if you hide things, and we don't. I don't see that you do, so I appreciate that
Thank you.
as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Rob, oh, excuse me, Rob Mazzella, Glenhead. Just one thing, just an opinion, in terms of the reserves. I think what would be helpful, if I've looked on the website and haven't found any information about the reserves either. I think in a time where we do have 30% of our budget in reserve, and when we're considering floating a bond for 30 or 40 million in the near future, it would be good PR to get the information out there and explain what those reserves are for. Just a list, a little brief description, when we expect those funds to be used. I think that would all be helpful. At a time where many people in the community are going to see their taxes rise as a result of the reassessments, coming to us and saying we need 40 million in bonds when you have 30 million, that it's there, we don't know what the intent is of that money and when it's going to be used. I think it would just be helpful to get that information out there.
I was going to say, I don't disagree. It could be much more accessible. There is a good discussion in the audit reports that we posted because they discuss what the reserves for, but they also lay out what our very significant long-term liabilities are, which I think with your background, you might enjoy reading as well. But, Superintendent?
So, I agree, and we're actually working on that as part of, so there's two pieces of this. We are, and some of this does exist on the web right now. If you go into last year's budget budget book, and you go into the revenue section of the budget and the reserve section of the budget book, you'll see them all listed out by reserve, what they are used for, and then for quite a number of them, we've listed out the use cycle of the planned use of them.
Like I said,
But to your point, right? I couldn't agree with you more. We need to put this in one concise place so you can click on it.
It's a little easier to find. I've spent again. Haven't spent hours trying to find it, but the few times I've looked, I haven't been able to.
I agree with you.
It could be
To stumble upon it.
I agree with you.
Then the controller has
I agree.
things too
Yeah.
that also show when and how it's going to be used.
And in a more user-friendly format. I mean, I know Rob has an accounting background, but everyone has the ability to plow through a audited financial statement.
No, we want to do it in a table and some words.
Yeah.
It's going to be too long for some people regardless.
No,
Lower
but
numbers.
we could try and make it
But
a
we
little
can
more
make it-
user-friendly.
There's an in-between where we are.
A little
where we're gonna
narrative,
be.
like we do in the budget.
I agree.
And just one thing about the block schedule, I mean, my son is at Chaminade. They did switch to the block schedule when he started last year. It's basically a 6-day cycle. They have 6 academic courses. They have 3 of those courses each day. And then they have a lot of kind of more fun classes kind of sandwiched in between them. So it's not like a very long, intensive day. If you don't have contacts there and you just want to see what the schedule looks like, I'd be happy to send you guys a copy of what the schedule looks like. If you're interested in that, I actually liked it a lot when they said they were switching to that. It replicates kind of a college experience in high school, and it's a good. It really is a good model.
Yeah. So we've asked all of our via the strategic plan, we've asked all the levels of the system to take a look at how time is used within the system, right? Because it's reasonably, there's some discretionary ways to use it, right? And so Albert and his teachers are talking about what is possible, what makes sense, what makes sense in other places, and so what all they are in right now, they're in their research stage. They'll then bring back to, he and I will have a conversation at some point about what
And
he
Chaminade
thinks
is a
are-
very different environment in
Yes,
terms of
that's absolutely
the
true.
number of courses
Yeah.
that they offer versus the number of courses that are offered here. So
That's absolutely true.
It would be much more challenging here, but if you just wanted to see the basic structure, I'd be happy to get that to you.
I would be happy to look at it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have anybody else? What?
If we're ready to go to business, could we invite our staff to go home?
Please.
It's okay with me, but I'm like,
Well,
Are you inviting them to your home?
who's home?
I've been. Are we?
Tomorrow and good night.
All true. So
Joanna would like you all to go home.
So, thank you all very much. Really terrific job. Thank you
Terrific.
very, very
And
much. Have a good
By
day.
no means do we mean we don't enjoy seeing you. We very much enjoyed having you.
All right. Be well. I'll talk with you in the morning.
If it's okay with everyone, we're going to continue
our
with
business.
Our regular business. I'm really like, can barely speak.
Do you want to read
Oh,
them?
thank you. You're all so kind. Thank you. All right, we are going to move on to action item B, which is personnel. Do I have a motion?
Betty has requested that I include her in the invitation.
Yeah, look. You too, sit down, Jack.
Betty's the most important person here. She goes nowhere.
Do I have a second on action B?
Second.
Personnel. Do I have any questions or comments?
No.
Dave, do you have something?
Sorry, Rob. I did. I prepared a couple words. Because it's not every day that we lose someone who's been here for 16 years in such a pivotal role. Among the many reasons I was disappointed to hear of your retirement is that I feel like after all these years I have a really good hold on how to pronounce your name. So that's going to be tough. Tough shoes to fill. But I hope whoever we find to join us after you finally do leave is going to be named like Cruz or Smith, something real simple. In many ways, a school district is like a living organism, and the academic program serves as both the heart and the brain. I think what makes you so special for us, Rob, is that you are that brain with a heart, and that you fill that role of being a heart with a brain as well. It's really displayed in all your work here at North Shore. You understand the curriculum, you understand what engages children, what excites their innate curiosity and learning, and you communicate that both to the students, to our faculty, to our staff, and to us. On a personal note, I've always found you to be supportive and insightful with a critical ear, always willing to listen. As someone whose professional experience, mine, is outside of the world of schools, I've relied on you to help me get up to speed on so many of the jargon and acronyms and the minutia of education, and also help me understand the context in which they operate. I know you don't like the spotlight, and although you're everywhere in our schools and meetings on committees where you're always valued an important contributor, you appear to be most at ease when you're just part of the team. So with that said, I know you probably will say I've already gone on too long. I've actually abridged a little bit I have here because it's getting late and I can tell it's going on a little long. But I didn't want to stop before I just say thank you very much for everything you've given to us and to celebrate. You really made a critical impact on thousands of kids and people that have walked through these halls. So thank you, Rob. You're also in a good position of being in this position so young to retire, and you have so much left to offer. So that's a great thing, and I wish you great luck. Thanks, Rob.
I too can't bring myself to vote without saying just a few words, Rob. I feel compelled. I want to thank you for all the support you've given us here, explaining things, and I think to Dave's point, I was going to say translating things for us. Thank you for your many long hours, all of your hard work, your dedication to education, not just here, but throughout your career, your entire adult life you have given to education, and everyone should thank you for that. thank you for the incredible progress I've been fortunate enough to be able to watch at North Shore since I've been here. And I'm sure I don't know the half of it, even just from what I've seen. And I think most importantly, I just want to say thank you for just the incredible level of authentic work we've seen from your students, even here in this room, and what we've been able to witness. It's been powerful and moving, and we're grateful, and it is very hard to imagine North Shore without you, and I know I personally as well will really miss you. Thank you. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Reluctantly raising our hand.
I just would like to say thank you. I'm humbled by your thanks, and it's really I who am thanking all of you. It's been a tremendous run here for me at North Shore. It's become my home, the longest place that I've ever served a district, and for you to give me that opportunity 16 years ago, previous boards and this board continuing, I thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I hope that I've served you well. So thank you.
That is very gracious of you. I think the thanks should come from us, but thank you. Okay, good?
Great, thank you.
Much less exciting. We did. Just to say we did.
Reluctantly.
I was getting ready, we all reluctantly voted. The anticlimactic action C, approval to dispose of inventory. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Approval of budget transfers is action D. We need to move about $79,000 to cover transportation for St. Christopher students.
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Action E, donation, acceptance of a donation from the Glen Head PTO to North Shore Schools for $75 to help with their life skills program trip. Motion?
Motion.
Second. Got it. All in favor? I think I can group actions F, G, and H, contracts generally regarding special education services. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Questions or discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Action I is the approval agreement with TK Tours. They will be taking some of our middle school students to Philadelphia. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? Second. Questions? All in favor? Everyone's very docile at this point in the evening. We move on to our second opportunity for comments from the public. Come on. No, just kidding. Denise, it's good to see you.
Hi, Denise Reiner, Glen Head. Rob, are you leaving tomorrow?
No.
And it's not
till
that he's
June.
leaving so young, he just looks really good.
Is there a difference?
So, just quickly, I'm just wondering for Chem, since I've been here for so long and I'm a dinosaur, and I've watched how the chemistry, even in its heydays, was still, as it should be, a difficult course. Is there some way, perhaps, I think chemistry is different than other courses, where it's like a new language, it's something totally new, and I don't think that we have anything anywhere in the curriculum in elementary school or in middle school, or even in the high school, that's kind of like an intro. And I think that although honors chem should be as challenging as it is, considering that we consistently have had this difficulty, and we have attempted throughout the decade, at least the decades that I've been here, I think that a little preparation, maybe an intro or somehow a taste of it at an earlier, I don't know what you think, Mr. Galati, but I think that might be something worth considering. The other thing, I'm really happy, I know that we're looking at time, and this was one of the things that came out of from the strategic planning, and I hope that we look at that last month, because after all of the IB exams and the AP exams, the classes, they need to have finished the curriculum in order for the students to take these exams. And then there's another month of school. So I don't know how, when we're talking about time, I think how to best utilize this time so that the children continue to grow and to learn instead of perhaps what they're doing right now. Also, the tutoring question, the only thing that I want to bring up, which is, I don't want to repeat anything that anyone else said, but I see it actually as an equity issue, which is why I think it's important to look at, because, and yes, there are the National Honor Society students, but there is a big difference between having a student. It's hard to find an adult who's a teacher who's a great tutor. So when we're looking at how our kids are doing, I think it is an equity issue, and the classes also move along according to how well the kids are getting it. So I think that divide from those who are succeeding and those who may be having more difficulty, I think we would be able to take a look at that in a more fair way, since our goal is equity for all learners. So perhaps then it wouldn't be is scary. And right now, I think one of the things also with equity that we're trying to do is we're trying to become aware of our own biases, and we're trying to be more honest about who we are as a community and in the classroom and in the, throughout the school. So I think feeling comfortable to honestly look at how are we getting here? Okay, we have these numbers, how are we getting here? And how can we help everybody get to that point? The other thing is I'm a little, I don't want to use the word concerned. I'm questioning as far as, I remember when LAC was first formed. Is it 10 years? How many years? But I remember when it was first formed, and I remember why it was formed. And I've looked at the activity over the years, and last year there was a little bit of a lull, and we're looking for ways to take these incredibly intelligent, motivated volunteers and give them something worthwhile to do. I'm a little afraid that, and I voted for many of you who are sitting here, whether or not you were a teacher or married to a teacher or were a teacher. But it's almost like I see maybe the chromosomes. That's something I'm afraid of us coming out a little quirky here, because we do have 4 members on the board that are either current, married to, or past teachers. The person who is the head of LAC, who's chairing it right now, is a teacher. And I am hoping that we are very aware that whatever we ask LAC to do doesn't cross over a line and isn't in line with what are actually teachers' union issues, because I think the community itself has a lot of issues. The last thing I just want to say is that although some people may not be able to verbalize it without anger, I think there's a large segment of the community that maybe would like the Board of Ed trustees to be a little more concerned about the costs and the money that's going out. And I think that there is a concern that for people who come up here and talk, they talk to the board almost like the board is not for them and are not representing them, and that the board is another entity. And you guys are us. And last year, when Dr. Giarrizzo presented a budget, there were some board members who even wanted to increase the budget from what was presented. And at this time, when especially, I'm not even going to say especially this year, it should be every year that we're looking at, I think what Jerry was saying is not just what, but why and if we need it. And we seem to be adding more and more and talking about equity and wanting people to stay in this district. It's getting harder and harder. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say, but I guess there's probably not anybody. That's everybody. Thank you, Denise. I was like, you already did. Okay. All right, thank you. We're up to old business. We had indicated that we would talk again about whether we would like LAC to look at the red flag law. Greg was kind enough to bring it up last time and to send us the backup information. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts on letting LAC take a look at this and formulate a recommendation or an action plan?
I'll start. I think that LAC has many issues on the table for right now that we've already prioritized. And I think those issues are more directly related to educational and funding issues for the district. I see this as something that, I understand the point that there is some link in it, but it's not directly an educational or funding issue. And since we are now already in December, and we are trying to get LAC organized to do the things that we really want to get done and get done with Super LAC, I'm not inclined to now burden them with another assignment.
Who else do we have? I'll say from my perspective, I feel somewhat obligated to have LAC at least read the research and take a look at it, because once I read the legislation, and of course it very directly involves school personnel, I find it difficult for us to say that we're not going to take at least that next step. We're absolutely impacted by the legislation. And to me, it also feels like it really gets at the health and safety of our students. And that, we've got lots of important things to look at, but I certainly think this is one of them. Who else do we have?
I understand it's obviously a very controversial topic, but I think it's important to remember that LAC is not an action board. LAC is a research arm of this board, and this is a legislative matter that directly affects this district. They're the petitioners who can make the appeal for these kinds of acts, and school officials, teachers, administrators are all very clearly listed. And we're spending a lot of time and research and effort talking about security measures, many of them pursuant to what many of us have spoken about tonight, require lots of money for things that may or may not work and are recommended by outside consultants, and we just do them because we want to have that feeling of safety. And some of them may in fact create safety, and some of them may in fact create expenditures that don't actually impact them. We don't really know. And so I think in this case, asking the people on LAC to do some research has no harm and can engage them in a topic that directly affects us and can give us information for us to make a decision. Again, at the end of the day, we're not deciding on policies for our district based on this. We're deciding if we are going to sign a letter in support of this legislation. And we talked early on about changes in Albany and how that could affect schools. There's a new Senate in Albany. This is a legislation that has been passed in several states, is something that's been passed by our assembly and has gotten to the Senate several times and installed and may come through and affects us very clearly and potentially very directly. So I feel very strongly that we should do this and can do this, and we have enough people on LAC who can certainly do this without interrupting the rest of the docket. That's my take.
Who else?
I just have one comment in terms of the proposed bill and law, including school personnel. As school personnel stands now, when you hold a license in New York, you're a mandated reporter. You're ethically obligated to report any concerns that you have regarding the safety abuse or maltreatment of children. And I feel very strongly about that. I hold a license where I must do that, and I must report. And if I heard or saw direct evidence to that. So I'm very concerned, as you know, and I've said it before, that safety of our children is paramount. I would not object to some research being done by LAC, and I know there's an individual on that particular organization who is very well versed in the law, and constitutional law especially, when you're looking at due process and civil rights as it pertains to our Constitution. So I would not have a problem with that being researched.
Rich?
Yeah. One concern that I have, I mean, I think it's worth looking at, but after the research is done, I really would feel much more comfortable if the district's legal team would look things over as well, because I have some concerns about issues of liability, because the bill has changed several times since its inception, and some of the subtle wording could be problematic. So I think it's certainly worth looking into, but I would feel much more comfortable if we could run it through our legal people.
Can I make a follow-up point? I think it's a great point, because if you look at the way the bills are crafted in different states, they're all slightly different, and they all allow things to be done in different ways, and I wonder about the potential liability for those. So I certainly would support that as well, but I think research at this early stage makes sense.
I agree.
good?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll take a look at it. Do we have other old business?
Peter had sent us in his, I guess, his memorandum, information regarding Albert's recommendation for the PSAT.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I had asked that be done. I was wondering if he considered, I mean, I guess I agree with that recommendation, but I'm wondering if he just looked at still administering it to juniors and whether that could be done where the other students have a normal school day.
Right. So as a result of that memo that went home, I had a whole series of questions that came in from some of your colleagues on the board. And so I've given those questions to Albert and to Rob, who are doing some more research on this. And so the result of that is, I think it makes the most sense to have that discussion on the 10th when Linda Binion is here on the counseling report. And so we can take a look at this in the context of college and career, what's happening at the high school, do we want to bifurcate it? You know, the issues of, there are some issues of equity related to this, there are some issues of, there is a loss of instructional time related to this, right? So where's the...
And a billion questions.
And a billion questions. So where is the sweet spot in the solution to this?
Okay, thank
So,
you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned equity, I'm sorry. You talk about equity in that?
I did.
Good.
It was in there. Other old business? New business? Dick?
Very, very quickly. So we understand, Lisa, through the civics, that a permit has been issued for 60 new townhouses in North Hempstead, part of Glenwood Landing. Glenwood Landing's so tiny, and yet we're in two towns. There's not a lot of info on that, but I think it's something worth monitoring. So the civics are monitoring it, and I just wanted the board to be aware of it. I have no idea if it's 55 and over. I have no idea if it's ever going to get built, but potentially that could be an influx of students. And I think it does speak to the broader issues of capacity studies in our building that I know we're doing as part of the preparation for bond work, potential bond work. But these are all different pieces of the puzzle. This is a new one, so I wanted to bring it up.
This is the Lundy?
This is not Lundy. This
is
is
the one near the Swan
it's
Club.
behind the Swan Club. It's been a,
Oh, okay.
Shore Road.
it's at the curve of Shore Road.
Yep, I know exactly what you're
There has
talking about.
been,
I
I'm
tried
trying
to
to think
give
of the
Peter
best
a
way to
map
say
of
this.
all the-
There's been environmental remediation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to use air quotes, but
Yeah,
in
for
that,
those,
in that
I
area.
know exactly what you're talking about.
It's not fenced off, so I'm sure it's fine. I had new business. I sent you guys an email, but NISBA had sent you one too, that NISBA is asking school boards to support the bill that is pending that would allow BOCES capital expenditures to be exempted from the tax cap the same way a district's own direct expenditures on capital are exempted. And that would, whatever's happening with these spending bills will happen before the end of the year, and this is our last opportunity. So I wanted to know if the board would like me to sign that letter on our behalf and send it to the governor to support the additional exclusion. I have a copy of it here somewhere.
You all have it.
Oh, we all have it?
You all have it.
In our backup.
Oh, we all have a copy of the letter, apparently. Do you guys have any feelings one way or the other? I don't think our signing or non-signing will have a massive impact.
I think we should sign it.
But
It always disturbs
pretty
me that we have no say in the BOCES
I'm sorry.
budget, but yes, we have to pay
You said
it.
you do think we should sign it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you, and I agree.
Yeah.
nodding all around. Okay,
Go for it.
I'll sign it. I need a piece of letterhead or something. I gotta put the letter on something fancy though if we're gonna send it to the governor. Thanks, John.
You can stop by and we can do it for you. Okay. Sounds good. We'll put it on the board's letterhead.
Briefly, a discussion of block scheduling has come up many times, and I think it's going to come up again, and people are going to talk about it out of strategic planning and stuff. If there is any research, like data, research, studies on block scheduling, I would be happy to read it. Because I'm interested in, there's a lot that's very appealing, but you could imagine also, oh, is that too long for some kids to be in the same place? Is it really good not to have math every day? You know, I can make them a million questions, pro and con. Would you like me to now?
Not to.
No, maybe another time. Okay. So anyway, I'd like some real research. I would like us to be making
It does give you less flexibility, right?
decisions on, listen, Marion's opinions are excellent, but I was thinking if there were some studies done somewhere, I would like to read those.
My opinions aren't the final. I don't know.
No,
What happened? I'm a woman of distinction. I mean, get over it.
You have 2 data points, I know, but.
Well, of course, any recommendation we bring, we'll have some research.
Just want to indicate my willingness to read up, be educated.
I think even Betty got that one.
Rob, you can ask the good brothers at Chaminade if they had any research on it.
Let's do it.
I think they probably just do what they want to do. Other new business?
I sent an email to Peter and my fellow trustees about a report that was sent to us from NISBA, and I think it's really a worthwhile read regarding the structure of school psychologists, their roles in schools, and social workers. And it's very true. I mean, and I've lived it. Our school psychologists do a lot of work dedicated to our special ed kids, those who are suspected of having disabilities. They do a lot of evaluations themselves. They work with other evaluators interpreting those reports. And it would be so interesting if we could do a little internal study of how much time our own school psychologists work towards the CSE and 504s, and what actual direct contact they have with some of our neediest students. And I know we've contracted with behaviorists in the elementary areas, and I think middle school as well. And I do know of a school district who has taken this to task. It's Harborfields, actually, and they kind of reoriented their school psychologist roles in making them have some more direct contact with their students for those kids where perhaps the school psychologist has particular expertise in attending to some kids' anxieties where it's appropriate in school, and have adequate referral bases, resources. So read the report. I think it might help to inform one of the pillars that we have in social emotional learning. And, just keep on going, helping our kids.
Thank you. Anybody else? Well, don't get mad, but I think we're going to have to adjourn. That's it. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Happy holidays, everyone.
So be it. The will of the people will
Me too.